Okay, guys, we're going to get started. I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm going to show you something else first. Make sure as many people can get here. I think everyone is here. Jordan, can you do me a favor and start me a sign in, please? Thanks. So I want to talk about where we're at today. How did the assignments go? We'll find out. Okay, I want to go back to this illustration here really quickly. So basically, this is our color managed workflow laid out. And so what we did last week and what you guys hopefully were able to accomplish over the course of this last week was to create this camera profile so that we removed the device dependence from your sensor or from the sensor of whatever. Again, you guys were working on my files. I don't think those were all the same cameras. I think there's a mix of cameras in there, but it didn't matter. Again, you do a camera profile that is attached to your shooting, not to a specific camera per se. So at any rate, we created this, which removed the bias of that sensor and gave us a neutral color palette, something that again removed the bias of that sensor. If we go back to the example, I'm going to go back to the example because we're going to do it again today in class. If we go back to the file that I used to demo in class last week, I think you guys, hopefully you will remember that camera sensor seemed to have a very strong bias to, it's hypersensitive to blue. So all the blues that happen off of that sensor, that come off that sensor, tend to be darker than they should be. Because again, the sensor itself is hypersensitive to blue. That's the bias of the sensor. So in creating a profile, that profile then removes that bias, and then the color that we ultimately get will be the same as any other camera that we shoot with, as long as we have a profile for those other cameras that removes those camera sensors' bias. Does that make sense, everybody, what's going on here? Okay, so we've created this part. That part's great. Now we need to do the monitor part. We're going to go through that in class actually right now. So what I'm doing again is that I've got good clean color that's actually in Photoshop now. Again, Photoshop's color space, they're all mathematical. We don't see anything, so there is no device dependence. Once we get into Photoshop, we have removed the device dependence. However, when we go to look at our file with a monitor, the monitor reintroduces the monitor's device dependence. So we need to create a profile for our monitor to remove that, so that then what we're looking at on the monitor is not influenced by that monitor. Does that make sense, everyone? So again, the thing to remember in all of this is that every single one of these is unique to the device that we are using to either create it or to view it or to print it. So even though if you go out into the digital print lab, there's 10 printers out there and 10 Macintoshes that are out there that are all look like they're all the same, you cannot create a monitor profile for one of those monitors and use it on any other monitor in there. That defeats the whole purpose. There are 10 monitors in there. There will be 10 unique profiles, one for each monitor that is specific to that monitor. Does that make sense, everybody, what we're talking about here? And then the same thing, we're going to get to printing. I don't want to do printing today. We will get to printing more towards the end of the semester, but it's the same deal. You can get, and most of you guys already know this part, most of you guys are already using canned profiles. So for instance, the Canons that are out there, they don't make profiles for Epson printers or Epson papers because that's their rival, but they do make canned profiles for all the Canon papers. They make them for Red River, they make them for Moab, they make them for Hahnemühle, they make them for, a whole cornucopia. You can get custom profiles for those. However, they're still relatively generic. Now they're close, don't get me wrong. You are much better off using a Red River profile that's supplied by Canon for your specific paper than nothing, but it still won't be as good as if you create your own custom profile for that Red River paper on that specific printer. It is just so, again, the Canon profiles will get you 90% of the way there, but if you want to be 100%, you got to make your own. Make sense? And the other thing to think about that is that when we get, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but nonetheless, when we get into the whole profiling of printers, it also has to do every bit as much with the type of paper that you're using. So again, Red River makes 10 different kinds of paper. You can't use a profile for one of those with another. So you can't use a profile for a Red River matte paper with a glossy paper. It doesn't work that way. They are all unique and individual. And then finally, it doesn't happen here a lot, but in some places you can get into custom ink sets. And when that happens, so a lot of people will know custom ink sets because a lot of people will go to like Costco and have their cartridges refilled. That's really shitty ink. Don't do that. Or I mean, it's fine to do it for, you know, if you're printing out, you know, a presentation or something, but not for your art. At any rate, there's all sorts of different mixes of ink sets, whatever, that people have and they use. If you're going to use a custom ink set, that becomes another variable that you need to generate a profile for to, in the end, remove that variability. Make sense? Okay. So anyway, we've gotten to this part now. We're going to generate a monitor profile. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. You're not going to be able to see this actually. You'll see the process happen on screen. You will not see the results on screen because you're looking at it through a projector. But I will flip my laptop around so that, or you guys can all come up here so that you can actually see it. But for the process part, it's going to be the same. Anyway, so the reason you can't see it on the projector is because the projector is now going to be the output source that you're looking at. You can profile a projector. You can profile damn near anything. You can do scanners, projectors, monitors, printers, film recorders. I mean, you can profile pretty much anything. But at any rate, so that's what's going to be. That's where we're going to start today. So it starts with this thing right here. It's actually a hardware-software combination. This is actually mine. This is a puck. They call this a puck. It's made by a company called X-Rite. This company has spun off its hardware software division for monitor calibration. And the new company is called Calibrate. So all of these old pucks that the media center used to have and that the studio used to have been replaced by the brand new ones from Calibrate, which is nice because if you had a brand new Macintosh that was using Apple silicone, so an M1 or an M2 or an M3, whatever, these pucks do not work. So, but again, the media center downstairs has pucks that will work on anything. And the studio actually has now apparently a couple of them that will also work on anything. So just make sure that that's what you get so that you don't all of a sudden grab this. I've got an old Intel Mac, so this older series, whatever, is going to work fine on this. But just so that you know that part, right? Okay. So this is a collaboration between hardware and software. So the software, all it's going to do is it's going to start to kick out a set of known colors. This hardware puck actually measures those colors. This is a spectrometer. So it doesn't measure color the way that we normally think of. It measures wavelengths, which is, again, the advantage of doing wavelengths of light is that it's unambiguous color. So this measures true color. So at any rate, when you get this, when you check out a puck downstairs or at the studio to actually calibrate your monitor, they don't provide software anymore, but there is a QR code on the label, on the little tag of the bag that holds the puck. Scan that QR code and it will take you to the correct version of Calibrate software to then download that software and then run it. Does that make sense, everyone? So the reason they're not handing out software anymore is that there were people, so they used to just have a thumb drive in along with these that you could just plug in, but people were putting malicious software on it or they were fucking with the software that was on there, whatever. And then again, when it got checked back in, nobody knew, and then the next person to check it out was screwing up their system. So they don't do that anymore. So just when you check this out, you need the puck, and then you need the software that will be on the QR code that you'll see, and you can just scan and download it. Does that make sense, everyone? What's going on here? Okay, so the way this thing works, again, is that the software is going to understand the colors that are getting kicked out. The hardware puck is going to measure it, and then it builds this table that is your profile that will then remove the device dependence of my monitor or your monitor. Does that make sense, everyone? Are we good on this part? Yes. So you're asking for the monitor calibration hardware software combo. This is just all of them that do this. There's 3 or 4 companies that do this. They're all called pucks. So that's, and the company that makes it now is Calibrate. But if you just go to them and say, hey, can I check out the monitor calibrator, they'll give you one of these, the correct one. How long does it take to actually calibrate your monitor? Even with the most extreme set of patches, the greatest number of patches, about 10 minutes. So you don't even have to check. I mean, you can check the thing out, go to the little lounge in the media center, calibrate your monitor, and give it back to them. So how often do you have to calibrate your monitor? This is my advice. So I tell everybody this, and it is true, but again, we're in slightly different circumstances. Everybody in this room know who Pixar is? You know, Disney, the animations, you know, mammoth, yeah, Disney, yeah, Walt, yeah. Anyway, Pixar, that division that Apple had developed and then sold to them, whatever. If you work for Pixar and you do not do this calibration every single morning, you're automatically fired. They don't give you a reprieve, they don't give you a warning, you are just out. And the reason that happens is that what happens at Pixar is that people are exchanging the digital content of a movie from one person to the next, and they expect the color integrity to remain intact. And if you are not working in a color managed workflow, that part of what you're working on, whatever, can actually get perverted. And if that happens and nobody picks up on it, then the entire film itself is put together and then it goes to a render farm. And basically a render farm is a gigantic place full of computers that simply converts the digital content that they've been working on for years into a movie. It takes weeks, if not months, to actually do they call it a RIP on there, which stands for raster image processing. But at any rate, if they get the film back and there's all of a sudden a part of it that's actually off, it costs them millions and millions of dollars to do the re-render. They got to go in and fix what's wrong, and then and they just don't allow it. So you're tracked, whether you actually do your monitor calibration or not, every single morning, and if you miss it, you're out. That's how important it is to them, and it's how important it should be to you. So, does that mean you have to actually calibrate your monitor every single day? No. My suggestion to you is this. I put up a schedule. I would say you need to calibrate once a month in general. But if you are doing your hardcore final color corrective work, you're going in there, not the major heavy lifting stuff, but the final stuff before you're going to do your prints for your portfolio, that kind of stuff, whatever, calibrate your monitor. It's simple. It doesn't take that long. Does that make sense? You don't need a calibrated monitor to do an Excel spreadsheet. You don't need it to read your email. You don't need it to actually write, your artist statement. You don't need it for any of those things. You need it when you really are going to go in and do the deep dive color corrective work on your file. That's when you need it. Color and tone both. I don't use it. My monitor stays, it's pretty well calibrated. It stays, I don't go that long without calibrating it. But for me, I do, again, a lot of compositing. I don't need to worry about selections of edges. I can see where there's a problem. I don't need to have a perfectly calibrated monitor to spot those problems. So the work that we're going to do today later on, working on building selections and layer masks and all that kind of stuff, you can do all of this work without having to have a perfectly calibrated monitor. But you'll be shocked at how off your monitor really is. Are we good on this part? Okay. So I'm going to show you one last thing here. How many people in this room know what color temperature really is? We talk about it all the time, right? When you go into Camera Raw, either in Lightroom or in Photoshop, that little scale up at the very top, it always says temperature intent. Color temperature is one of the axes that we actually use in LAB to do our color correction. It's the blue to yellow axis, that's where it is. So color temperature is really critical for us when we talk about white balancing. And so also when you're talking about you setting up your monitor. And the reason this is that what we're looking for is a white that is removed, any color cast at all has been removed from the white balance of your monitor. So that when you look at any shade of gray, it does not have a color cast. That's the goal in all of this. And that value uses the Kelvin scale to actually tell you what your white balance should be in degrees of Kelvin. But that's really weird. It's like degrees of Kelvin. What the fuck is that? So this is what you need to know about this whole part. Again, hopefully in understanding this and understanding the process behind it, you don't need to memorize any of this stuff. You just go, oh yeah, I know what we're doing here and why we're doing it. So this is basically what it is. So way back when, there was a guy named Fahrenheit, and he did a scale that just measures, at what point does water freeze and make ice, and at what point does it boil. So in the Fahrenheit scale, it boils at 32 degrees. It freezes at 32 degrees and it boils at 212. Well, another guy comes along and says, his last name was Celsius, and he goes, well, that's way too complicated. I want it to be 0 and 100. So he just rebuilt the same scale. It has different units in it, but water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and boils at 100 degrees Celsius. That's really simple, right? So then Kelvin comes along, another guy who just says, well, I'm going to do another scale. But what he did that's actually a little bit trickier is this. So we're going to dive into slight bit of how chemistry and physics actually of temperature actually work. So if you imagine a block, just a glass of water, okay? If we just take a regular glass of water that's at room temperature and we start to cool that down, what we're doing is we're removing energy from it. And by the time that water gets down to 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever, it freezes. That doesn't mean it's as cold as it can get. It just means it's lost a lot of its energy and its molecules have stopped moving around really crazy. In a normal cup of water that's not ice and it's not boiling, there's molecules that make up the water that are just bouncing around and they're banging into each other, whatever, but they're moving, they're in motion. Does that sort of make sense? If you then start to add heat to it, we're adding energy, that's what it is. And what happens to those molecules is they start banging into each other faster. Because again, you're adding energy to it. So they start moving faster, they're hitting each other faster. And then by the time you get to where water boils, they're hitting each other so hard, they're actually flinging water into the air. That's why you see steam. That's what steam actually is. It's that action. So does that make sense that as you start to add energy, things get motion much, much faster? And as you start to subtract energy, they get colder and colder and colder. Does that make sense, everyone? That's the most you have to figure out in this whole part. So what Kelvin figured out was this, or what Kelvin decided was, is that, well, what happens if you remove all the energy? Every single bit of it. If you do that, then the molecules stop moving. You cannot get any colder. There's a limit to this. Once you remove all the energy, there is nothing. There's no energy in it. And what happens when you reach that state is that you have what is called a black body. Because it has no energy, it doesn't emit any light. You cannot get darker than 0 degrees Kelvin. So 0 degrees Kelvin is about 460 degrees below 0 on the Fahrenheit scale. It's incredibly cold. But what happens again, and what's important at this part, is that at 0 degrees Kelvin, you have as black can possibly be. There is no energy in that black body. So because it's not giving off any energy, it's void. It has no energy. You can't get any blacker. There's nothing coming out of it. So it's simply empty of energy. Does that make sense, everyone? So that's 0 degrees Kelvin. Kelvin scale is only positive, so you start at 0 degrees Kelvin. That's the theoretical black body. Then if you start to heat this thing up, the molecules start to move. And when you get this heated up to around 2800 degrees Kelvin, it actually is glowing an orangish kind of color. That is the color temperature of most tungsten lights. These are actually supposed to be colored balanced daylight, but I doubt that they are. Certainly the normal lights that are in this room, the fluorescent lights in here, are not color balanced daylight. But your typical incandescent light bulb that you put into your lamp in your living room, whatever, is around 2800 degrees Kelvin. In photography, in the old days when they used to actually use hot lights to do this kind of stuff, they actually made theirs slightly cooler than that. They would do 3200 degrees Kelvin. So if you use like any of the hot lights that are in the studio, they're slightly slightly cooler than a normal tungsten light would be. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so that's right when you're beginning to see color. If you then add a whole lot more energy and you take the Kelvin, you take this black body and you get it up to 9,000 degrees Kelvin, you end up with what white would be on the top of Mount Everest on an incredibly clear, bright day. Because of the dominance of a blue sky, essentially in a field that's covered in snow, you end up with a very, very, very cool color temperature. 9,000 degrees has got a lot of blue in it. Apple ships their laptops calibrated to 9,000 degrees Kelvin. So you've got a built-in blue bias on your Apple computer if you've never calibrated it. Can't say the same thing for Windows. I'm not entirely certain about that. But anyway, so if you take a look at this scale right here, you can see that in this range over in here, the 2800 degrees Kelvin on this left side over here, I should go this on with my mouse cursor here. In this area right in here, this is where tungsten light is. In this area up here in the 9,000 range, this is where the top of Mount Everest is on a clear day. So you can see that there's an orange component here, there's a blue component here. The two of them at a certain point cancel each other out. And you end up at 6,500 degrees Kelvin, you have a neutral white point. You have no color cast. It is neither too warm nor too cool. It's actually right in the middle. So when we calibrate our monitors, there is a 3-step process for doing this. You're going to see all 3 steps here in just a second. The first step is that we're going to put in a series of values that we say we want our monitor to be, and one of those values is a white point of 6,500 degrees Kelvin because it has no cast, and that's what you want for your images when you're doing this kind of work. We also need to set the contrast of our image. So again, you can change the contrast on your monitor, but unless you set it to a standard, then if your monitor is too contrasty but your file isn't, you start to make adjustments based on the input from your monitor, and that's not really what's happening with your file. So we need to set those things. So anyway, the first pass with this hardware puck combination will actually try to calibrate your monitor to those values. The second pass actually then does the checking of the color. Where is the bias? We've tried to get this standardized. Where's the bias? We need to make a profile to remove that bias. And the third thing it does is it actually runs through, it loads the profile and runs through the whole thing again to verify, to make sure it's all working. That's what we're going to do. Make sense? All right. So to do this, again, I'm going to give you the instructions that I use for mine. This is mine, old school. You'll see that there's the puck on this side. This is a counterweight on the other side. And the reason you have this thing is that I'm going to do this backwards on this monitor right here, just so you can see it. It's so that you can actually adjust this so that when you take the weight and put it over the back side, this thing will hold against your screen. Does that make sense? All right, so that's what we're going to do here. That's what this part's about. On this puck, there actually is a protective cover on it. So what you'll need to do, and you'll see there's illustrations in the software about how to do this, but on this, there's this protective cover over a lens. So this is a frosted piece of glass right here. This is to actually measure ambient light in a room. We don't use that part. But if you lift this up, it only goes up like 1/8 of an inch, but it releases it. And then you can actually spin this to the side and you reveal this lens. This is what you want to put onto your monitor to actually measure the colors that are going to come out of this. Make sense? Okay. The last thing is that you need to clean your screen before you actually do this. It doesn't help if you've got, my screen was filthy. So, I mean, I'm not going to accuse anybody here of having a filthy screen, but I know you better. So, anybody in here ever clean their screen? How should you clean your screen? Do you know? So I'm going to just give you the piece of advice that I use. Turn your computer off to begin with. And then you want to actually, so here's my computer right here. I can't unplug that, or that'll unplug. You turn it upside down and you lay the screen flat so that it's on the ground facing up in your computer. So you just reverse this. So instead of it being like this, it's like this. See, my screen's flat now. So again, turn it off, lay it down on something soft, screen's pointing up but on the ground here, so that you've got a surface that you can actually rub on to clean it, right? And then I make my own cleaning solution. 50% alcohol and 50% water is the perfect solution for it. Then get a microfiber cloth, And then when you actually go, you don't want to pour the liquid onto your screen at all, because if it runs out to the edges of your screen, it'll get into the electronics of it and it'll fry your screen. You don't want to do that. So lightly, what most people will do is you will take a corner of your microfiber cloth, dip it into this solution, and then press that corner against another corner or the middle of the cloth or whatever to just transfer as little of that liquid as you possibly can. If you put it in a spray bottle, you can just spray your microfiber cloth and you'll be fine to go on that. And then you start in the middle of your screen and work your way out to the edges. You can have, it can be too wet in the middle of your screen. It won't go through the screen. But you need to be careful as you start to getting to the edges, because you do not want it so wet that you get liquid underneath those edges, because then it'll, again, you run the risk of frying your computer. Does that make sense? Okay, so you clean your screen, you go here, you get the puck thing, you're ready to go here. My last piece of advice is before you launch the software, this could be simply specific to this particular puck. You want to plug this thing in before you launch the software. In my experience, if you don't, what happens is you can get all the way to the end of this process and it won't let you save the profile that you're creating, which is really frustrating. All right, so I'm going to plug this guy in. And I'm going to launch the software. Again, it's going to be named different than the software that you guys have. I think the software now is just called Calibrate, but again, you'll see when you check it out. So for me, I'm going to go to my application folder. The software used to be called i1 Profiler. Once you open this up, it will be similar. It may not be identical, but it should be similar to what we have got going here. All right, and see, you'll see, in my case, you'll not see this part, but this is the place that's going to ultimately send you. This is the new i1 Profiler part right here. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. About where to get all this stuff. Yeah, again, when you pick this thing up from the media center, there's going to be a label on it with a QR code, and you just photograph that QR code and go to the website, and that's what you'll download. Okay, so anyway, this is what mine looks like right here. Yours will be very similar to this. It might be slightly different, but anyway, the part that matters here, we're going to go over this part regardless of what the interface truly ultimately does look like. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see you can do a display profile, a projector profile, a printer profile, or a scanner. Now, this particular puck right here only does projectors and monitors. It only does additive color. It does not do subtractive. So you can't use this to actually do a printer profile or a scanner profile, either one. This is not what you would use. But for display, yes. So I'm going to click on display. And this comes up, and at the very top of the screen, you'll see that there's two options to do actually here. There's one, which is the color LCD, which is my monitor, and then there's another one over here, this PT-VM. That's the projector. So if you don't have your computer hooked up to a projector or an external monitor, you're only going to have one of these options right here. So I'm going to click on the color LCD. That's the one I'm actually going to calibrate here. You do not want to fuck with these things down here. These are actually the technology. If you click on this drop-down menu, you'll see there's a technology for how it generates the colors on your screen. So most of this stuff doesn't pertain to laptops. If it does, if your laptop is truly an OLED, the software will actually know that, and it will pick that one. But in my case, it picks this PFS Photoshop, photo phosphate. It's a photo sensor part. So anyway, this part you don't need to worry about. Just pick the right thing. If you've got more than one monitor, you can actually, if you have multiple monitors, you can profile each one. Just remember that those are separate. They do not, you can't trade them, you can't cross them, you can't do any of that. So once you get them both calibrated, you need to go in and make sure that the proper profiles are assigned to those respective monitors. Anyway, we'll look at all that in just a second. So under white point, there's a drop-down menu right here, and you'll see that there is a whole list of CIE illuminants, and there's one that is D65. That stands for Daylight 6500 degrees Kelvin, which is exactly what we were looking at on that Kelvin scale. It is where you end up with a neutral monitor. Now, there are people who are in very specialized situations who prefer to have a different white point. So for instance, there are people who deal with papers that tend to have a very warm color cast. Cheap papers, this goes back ages ago. They tend to have a, well, anyway, you can actually then say you want your monitor to match the cast of that piece of paper. And if it's a little bit warmer, you might go to D55, you might go to D50. It just makes your monitor warmer. You're saying the target of your monitor you want to be warmer. This has all been pretty much debunked anymore. Nobody does that anymore. Everybody calibrates their monitor to D65 regardless of what kind of monitor it is. So that should be your go-to. So set it at D65. It will be on it by default. Then the target illuminance in here, you'll see right here, in my case it says 140. And then if you can see, it's almost impossible to see it, but right next to it is this thing that says CD/M with a little 2 above it. What that stands for is candela squared. What this is it is the brightness of your monitor. So we talked 2 classes ago about what sets the black point of your monitor, and it is your environment, right? How dark your room is. That's what impacts your black point of your monitor. Now we're setting the white point. The way you set the white point of your monitor is the brightness of your monitor. All of you, without exception, are you working on monitors that are way too bright, way too bright. But I say that, that's impacted by your environment as well. If you are in a really dark room, you're going to have a very different tonal response than if you go out in the sunshine out on the sidewalk right now. How many of you guys have trouble seeing your computer monitor in really super bright light? They've gotten a lot better because their monitors are a whole lot better, but in the old days, whatever, it was like you had to go, we had whole contraptions that you would go like under the hood. It looked like old school photography to be able to kill all the sunlight and the brightness of it so that you could really make a judgment about the images that you were looking at. So at any rate, does this make sense now? So the target for this, for most people, is somewhere between 120 candelas per square meter and 140. I do 140 on mine because that matches the monitor that I have. An external monitor at home, and I have another external monitor in my office here that both ask for 140 candelas per square meter, and this is, so that's just the version that I use here. So I'm consistent across the board. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. And then finally, the gamma, what they call gamma down here. All gamma means is it's the shape of a curve. So without getting too deep into this, monitors, cameras, digital cameras, all that, they're all linear response devices. And it basically means that they do not show tone the way our eyes see tone. The way our eyes see tone is logarithmic. And again, without getting too deep into it, all of you should know what is the difference in 5, 6, and 8 f-stops. What is that difference? Well, first off, it's a one-stop difference, right? From 5, 6 to 8. How many people in here do not know their f-stop range? Folks, this is your language. You're probably not going to hear this. I'm going to go back on the white now. I'm going to pause this recording. This is your language. It impacts everything you do as a photographer, and you people don't know this stuff, and it is crippling you, and it's so back here in our settings right here, this tone response curve, this gamma thing right here, you set it at a 2.2. What a 2.2, just that number, it just sets the slope of the curve, and basically it makes an arc. If you just look at it on like a typical curve would be in Photoshop, it just sets this arc. So these are the values that you need to know that you are setting here. So your white point is always D65. Your gamma is always 2.2. And then the brightness that you want to set, the luminance of your monitor, you want to set somewhere between 120 and 140 candelas per square meter. Those are the values you need to plug in. Now, there's a lot of CAN profiles, like I think on the new software you got, you can pick, they can say, well, do you want to do a setup for, and then it can be photography or illustration, or there's a whole different range of things, and you just pick, oh yeah, I want all the photo settings, and they will, for the most part, give you exactly what I just showed you here. Make sense? Okay, so with that in mind, so this is now set up critical here for everyone. There is a PDF about how to do this on our in the group of files that I gave you, either from week 1 or week 2. We can find it in just a second. But at any rate, you've got to shut some stuff off on your computer. And the reason I always remember that is this thing right here, this ambient light smart control. What that does is it just says, okay, we're going to build into this profile that you're creating, we're going to let the camera of your laptop measure the brightness of the room and change the profile based on the brightness. That completely defeats the purpose. Totally defeats the purpose. We are trying to shut these variables down. We don't want to reintroduce one right here. Make sense? It gets worse. If you're on Apple, come up to the Apple menu, come down to, you guys will have, your screen's going to look different than mine because most of you are on the latest software, and yours is now called System Services or System Settings right here. Anyway, you're going to have to find these. They exist. It's just the layout on the screen looks different. So the first place that I'm actually going to go on this is displays. And if you click on displays, the normal displays, this will actually open up and you have got all sorts of things in here that will hurt you. So I'm going to click on display settings. And these are my 2 displays. And again, this is the projector down here. This is, even though they rename it with me, anyway, this is my built-in Retina screen up here. So if we take a look at this, you have a check mark right here that says automatically adjust brightness. Again, if you have that checked, you're fucked, because your screen will use your camera to start measuring the ambient light of the room, and it will change the brightness as you go along. You've introduced a variable. Uncheck that. This true tone, what true tone is actually doing, again, it's adjusting your, it says it right here, automatically adapt the display to make colors appear consistent in different ambient light situations. You do not want that. You want a steady ambient light situation. That's what we talked about day 1 in this class. Not starting with all the windows open in the noon and retouching until midnight, where you go from all this light that's streaming into your room, really bright room, to a really almost black room and really dark at night, whatever. There's no consistency in that. You cannot do retouching that way. You just can't. Anyway, you want to make sure that's unchecked. And then there's this night shift. I can say done here. If you click on night shift, what night shift does, if you turn it on, it will actually, as the day goes on, it's now looking at the clock on your computer. As the day starts going on and it anticipates that you are now going into nighttime, it actually warms your screen up to combat the inherent blue of your screen. Again, you do not want this turned on. This is another variable. So now we've got 4 variables that we could possibly introduce that will say to your computer, oh yeah, you do it on your own. You're out. You guys, you'll just never be able to work. This will never work for you, ever. So anyway, all of my stuff's turned off, so I don't need to worry about that part. I'm going to go back here. You would think that that would be enough. Nope, not enough. If you click on accessibility and then also go to displays again, a completely different set that we've actually got in here. This is not true of Windows. This is true of Macintosh, though. In Macintosh, they have that transparent screen thing. So you can actually, as you're working on one screen, you'll actually be able to see a screen underneath it. And it's a very cool visual effect, but when you go to actually profile your monitor, what ends up happening is that it's going to start putting up these colors for you to measure, but if you've got transparency turned on, it's going to let whatever is underneath that come through the screen. So if you've got something underneath it that's red, it's going to add red to the color that it's trying to measure. It perverts the color, and again, it'll kill your profile. So you want to make sure that you have reduced transparency on, and then you never should have found your way into this preference anyway. But if you did, and you touch this display contrast, this is how you fuck everything up. Change it back to normal and leave it there. Don't ever go after it. Of all the things that Apple should shut down, this is the thing. This is the number one thing they should remove from being able to adjust. Okay, questions about any of this so far? All right, so then back in this, I'm going to click on the next arrow, and you'll actually see that there is a series of patches right here. And this is what it's going to actually feed out. So it's going to kick out every single one of these colors one at a time. The hardware is going to measure it. It's going to then develop a table that deals with the difference in what the file asked for and what the monitor showed. And in building a table that has those discrepancies in it, it can negate them, and you end up with device independent color on your monitor. Okay, so I'm going to hit start measurement at the top. Again, your screen with the new software, it'll be slightly different. And it'll walk you through it all. So it's saying, okay, on your little thing here, you need to do exactly what I said to do. You need to lift this up to release it, the cover, flip it around to the other side, and you are ready to go. And it's going to say, okay, for best results, it makes sense to tilt your screen back so that the puck lays against it. If you have the screen pointing in the other direction, the puck can come off of it, which again will screw up your measurement, right? So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. I'm going to put it on the back of my screen. So this is now sitting on my screen just the way these things are illustrated. This illustration right here, this is now what my screen looks like. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. And then I'm going to hit next. And the first steps it's going to go through in here is it's actually going to try to determine the brightness of my monitor. So this will happen in the other software as well. And you will see it's going to give you a result. And the result here is that you're saying, I said I want 140 candelas, but your monitor is right now set at 509. It's 5 times brighter, or 4 times brighter than it actually should be. Good luck trying to decide on the contrast or the exposure of your file when you're looking at something that's 4 times brighter than it should be. It's impossible to do. So this is the hard part to do on Macintosh. It's hard to do on both Macintosh and Windows, so I'm just going to tell you my tricks. So you have 2 options to do this. The first one is the way you control the brightness of your monitor. On a Macintosh, it's the keys that are right underneath your screen. It's the one looks like a small little sun and one looks like a big little sun. You guys know how to change the brightness of your monitor, right? Okay, so I'm going to take the brightness of my monitor and I'm going to crank it all the way up. So all the way up, it's reading this 509 candelas, which is too bright. But now if I start to click down, I'm going to go 1 down. It will remeasure, and that goes down to 370. I'm going to go 2 down, and the next one gets me to 267. I'm going to go 3 down. Again, just clicks of that darkness. That's 3 down. I'm going to click it again. 4 down, and 4 down for me hits right at 140. This is exactly where I want to be. So I take a Post-it note and I write a little thing on my screen, or just put it anywhere on your screen, that when you want to do color corrective work, the true real deal here, the thing that you built into your profile, it is brightness, complete total brightness minus 4 clicks. And if you have a little note in there, then you can set this. So at night, when you're trying to see your porn at night under the sheets, you can actually crank your monitor up as bright as you want to. It doesn't matter, because the next morning when you want to actually do serious retouching, you go complete brightness minus 4 clicks and your monitor will be set at its correct brightness. Does that make sense, everyone? The other thing you can do, which is more complicated, but it'll work as well, is that you take out your phone, and you'll notice every time I click on that little brightness, it gives me a little preview. When you get to the correct brightness, shoot a picture of it with your phone, and then you can go back in and count the little teeth that are turned off. But I'm telling you, make it as bright as you can, and then come down the number of clicks and just make a note of the number of clicks, and you'll be fine. Are we good on this part? Okay, so I'm at the correct brightness. So now my monitor is set for the correct brightness, and I'm just going to hit the next arrow. So the first pass it's going through right now is, again, and you can see that there's 118 patches. So, and what it's doing right now, it's just kicking these colors out and it's measuring them. It already did the calibration when it was doing the brightness setting. It set it at, again, my white point got set to 6,500 degrees Kelvin, and my contrast is now set at 2.2. So now it's just going through and measuring these things. So now would be a very good time to take a very quick break. So I've got 154, we'll call it 155, hard 10, be back at 205, and we will pick up right where this left off. You do. So for those of you who are still in the room, now it's actually gone through it. Now it's actually verifying it. And you'll see it's going to go through a series of grays. And if all the grays from the black all the way up to white, if they're measuring all those things, whatever, turn out to be neutral, then the calibration was correct. And the calibration and the profiling both. Because the profile has been loaded now. So it's just... Just say you want the monitor calibrator. They don't have it listed as monitor calibrator. See if they have an I1 profiler, but I like the letter, not the eyeball. It'd probably be under miscellaneous.
Under miscellaneous, it says measurement device.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. It's also in the Oh, it's under video equipment. X-Rite monitor calibrator.
That would be it.
It's under video equipment.
Although the irony of that is it's no longer an X-Rite. Button again. And it's going to say the measurement was successfully completed. Click next to actually go to the next step. I'm going to say okay to that. But what I want you to look at is this is the difference in the monitor. I see those little patches that we started with. So the area that is on the top left is what got asked for. The area at the bottom right is the color my monitor showed it. Do you think there's a problem? Like, massive problem, right? Like, you cannot get color without a calibrated monitor and the one that's been profiled. You just can't do it. You are guessing. Your monitors are all lying to you. There's no other way to put it. They are, and you believe it. So if your monitor is showing you something that is too red, you go ahead and put a curve in Photoshop to remove the red, but the mistake is in the monitor, not in your file. So then you make your file too red, and you make your file too blue to try to get rid of the red, or too green to get rid of the red, and then you print it out and you got this really green ass print and you're going like, what the fuck is going on here? It's because your monitor was never calibrated, your monitor is lying to you. This is how you stop that lie. The top half is the color that was asked for. The bottom half is the one that my monitor created when asked for that color. So I'm going to go ahead over here and hit next again. And it's going to offer me to save my profile, and it's going to name it for me. It's going to call it color LCD _ 17 _ 09 _ 2024. Part of that is correct. Part of it is the date. You want the date on here, but color LCD doesn't mean anything to me. So what I'm going to do is rename this, and I'm going to call it MBP, which stands for MacBook Pro. And then I'm going to go past the date. I'm going to put in another underscore and VE for my initials. So now I know that I'm the one who made this profile. That's the date it was made for, and it's for my MacBook Pro, as opposed to my external monitor, which is a BenQ. I've got two of them. One's this 27-inch, one's a 24-inch. So again, you need to label your shit so that you know if you've got multiples of the same thing like I do, which is which, to make sure that you've got the correct one loaded. Make sense? Okay, so then I'm finally, this part I'm going to click on Save the Profile. It's going to ask you if you want to do it. You used to be able to do this system-wide. You now only can do it at user level. Doesn't matter. This profile reminder is just, you can actually pick it, and it'll just, if you say 1 week, you're going to get a week from today, a screen's going to pop up and say, time for you to profile your monitor again. I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I'm going to click on Save Profile. It's going to say this was successfully done. Now, we're going to lose the projector right now. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. We're going to lose the projector right now. I'm going to go ahead and quit this guy. There's another way of actually doing these previews, but I just want you guys to see the real deal here. So I'm going to lose this, but I need all of you to actually get in a position where you can see this screen right here. So stand up, move in close. If you can see where you're at, that's fine. But this is the only way that I can show you the difference in a profiled screen and a not profiled screen. So I'm going to go to my Finder, because the Finder's got a neutral gray on it. It seems somewhat easier to see that way. I'm going to hide everybody else. All right, and I lose one of these windows here. So I'm going to go back to, right now the monitor, this is now calibrated in the correct monitor profile. The profile is actually loaded on here, so all the work is actually done that I want. But what I'm going to show you is the way Apple ships this. I'm going to show you sort of the before and after. Does that kind of make sense? All right. So if we come up again to System Preferences, and we go to Displays, and we go to, this is now just my MacBook, that's the only one that's showing here, and in this color profile drop-down menu, you can see it's labeled as MPB underscore 17-09-2024 underscore VE. This is the profile I just made. If I click on this drop-down menu, I can go back to this color LCD. That's the way Apple shipped it. Do you see how much shift into blue we just went? Apple does this to make your shit look more color saturated. Apple doesn't care really about your color. It does, because it makes these things available to us, but it doesn't really care about the color out of the box. It just wants, mom looking at pictures of her kids going, Jesus, that's really super saturated. I love that. That's the reddest shirt I've ever seen. I mean, that's the idea behind it. They are selling a lot more computers to her than me. I'm going to go back to the correct one. Watch what happens here. So I got to find the latest one. There, 170924. Yeah, there's no, oh wow, there's Jesus Christ. Look at this one more time. So again, look at this. How do you do this? How on earth, if you were looking at something that's this blue and you try to color correct for that, you are hopeless in getting a print that will work. You're hopeless about getting a file that will go to another computer that will work. Can't be done. I can't stress how important calibration is to this. It's the key. We good? Okay. I know that seemed like a lot and very long and winded and drawn out, but I do that to stress the importance of doing this. So, again, I have nothing against, this is not a shot against the Windows people or the Apple people or saying one's better than the other. That's not the case at all. Windows is far more complicated in actually making sure that the profile that you just built is actually running. In the Apple world, this is all you need to do. It doesn't matter now. You can occasionally go in and check to make sure that another profile didn't somehow get loaded, but for the most part, it's really sticky. In the Windows world, it's not like that. In the Windows world, it's extremely complicated to get the profile loaded correctly. And then once you do it, every time your Windows machine goes to sleep, it will default to the original shipping profile. Every time your Windows machine does a restart, it will default to the original profile. So I've got the whole workflow for Windows people developed. So how you make sure that the profile is loaded correctly, and you'll get really used to it. You just need to go through those steps every single time you restart your computer or every single time your computer goes to sleep. It's a pain in the ass. But again, it only really matters when you're doing serious color correction and serious tonal correction. That's when it matters. But just to give you some idea to find it, if we go to our week number 2 student files, it should be in here. Windows PC display calibration. This is where it is. And if we click on this and open it up, you will see there's like 9 pages of this. But again, it's all laid out for you. Again, you just follow. It's a lot of pictures. And when I say 9 pages, this isn't going to take you an hour to do this. It's going to take you 5 minutes to do it, and it's something you just need to memorize about how to do this so that you can do it over and 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 over again. But there you go. Okay. Any questions about any of this? Okay, I need everybody now to get onto their computer. We actually need to talk about how we can submit files onto our server. So if you take a look in our class session 1, our student files, the 1, you will see there's 2 PDFs in here. One of the PDFs, let me make sure I've started this video up again. Sorry, guys. Yep. Anyway, there's 2 PDFs. And one's called Connect to Class Projects via Macintosh PDF, and the other is Connect to Class Projects via Windows.pdf. once you do this the first time, it should remember most of this stuff, and it's relatively simple to do. So I'm going to show this to you really quickly just to walk through this. You can do this yourself, but I'm going to do at least, again, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to do the Windows one. I want to explain a couple of things about it. So I have got both of them open. This is the Windows version right here. This is the Macintosh version right here. They start out at the very top the same, and what it talks about on the very top is this Global Protect VPN. We don't use this anymore, so you can ignore the whole first part of it. What the Global VPN was all about was that how could you get access to the server if you were off campus? It is still possible to do, but they have made this so incredibly complicated and difficult, you just don't want to go down that road. If for some, again, we've made contingencies for this class here. So if you cannot be on campus to submit your homework to the server, then you can send it to me via Smash. But other than that, I don't want it via Smash, because right now there's 4 or 5 assignments that you're turning in for this week right now, and there's 16 of you. And so I'm just going to do the rough math. I get 90 emails with Smash links to it for 1 week, and I've got to download every one. No, I do not want to do that. So you use Smash in an emergency only. Do not make that your normal way. Just plan on showing up to class. I don't download this stuff till after this class is over. So when you first show up here, you can put your work up on the server. When we take a break, you can put your work up on the server. Any and all of that stuff is not a problem. So just don't, please don't send me stuff via Smash unless you are, I mean, obviously if you're at home and you're sick and you're not coming in and you want to get your homework in on time, but just Smash transfer it to me. That's not a problem, but don't make that the normal. Okay. So anyway, ignore the whole first part of the top of this. It's the same in the Windows instructions right here. Ignore this whole first part on the top about this going to the VPN. And instead, the Windows people are going to start right here. And again, it should work you through everything here and here. So you're going to right click on the start menu in the lower left hand to get to this. And you want to go through all of this. So the run dialog box should appear. You want to type in quotations this. And you need to, when it says here, with the quotes included. So you will see this is a sample of it right down here. It is a quotation mark / 172.20.208.221 / class projects with a space in the middle, close quotes. That's what the Windows people put in. And then just finish. Again, open that and just finish reading through this. It will get you to our server. If you have problems, we can look at it either after class or we'll figure that whole part out. That's for the Windows people. For the Macintosh people, I'm just going to walk you guys through this. It's a little bit simpler to do. So for the Macintosh people, you need to go to your Finder. Again, that's when your screen first opens up. We're going to go back to the Go menu again. So click on the Go menu. This is how we actually got to our library to do things last week. But in the Go menu, at the very bottom of the Go menu, you'll have as a Connect to Server. Once we do this once, it should remember all of this. It'll be far easier. You're not going to have to remember this whole process. So anyway, click on Connect to Server. A dialog box will actually open up, and what you want to type in this dialog box. Let me see if I can zoom in on this guy. Does anybody remember the keyboard shortcut for zooming in on a Mac? All right, I'm just going to read this out to you. Hopefully you can see it up here. So, all lowercase. A is in Apple, F is in Frank. Did everybody find this place to enter the value here? Okay, I'm starting all over. A is in Apple, F is in Frank, P is in Paul, all lowercase, colon, // 172.208.221. Now once you put that in there, do not hit connect yet. If you instead come over to the lower left-hand part of that dialog box and hit a plus, it will actually load that as a favorite of yours so that you never have to remember this number shit again. You simply will go to the Go menu, down to Connect to Server, and you'll have it sitting right here. You just need to click on it, So I'm going to click on mine. It loads the value up in there and then simply hit connect. So when you hit connect, then it's going to take you hopefully to the login page that you would typically use on any computer in Columbia. So it should be asking you, in my case, it's not going to ask me for any of that because I've already put it in. But in your case, if I go back to the server part right here, put all of this in, you will now be prompted to put in your credentials. And I think that's the extent of my notes. And you should be able to log in. For Windows, Mario, were you able to go through that whole process and find it? Okay, yeah, exactly. So once you get to this, you will have put a server on your, don't ask me why they call it this, but the server's name is TIKAL. Once you get onto that, you should have the option to do class projects, or there's something else that's on the server you can go for. You want to click on class projects. Once you get to that, there's a whole series, there's a folder for every person who teaches. I don't know how they split this up. I know all of photos here, but other people are on this as well. Anyway, you want to navigate to the Engelhard folder. That's my last name. Click on that. It will open up. And once you open up, we're going to take a quick little tour around here. So is everybody at this spot? Does anybody not make it? Oh, this is a beautiful thing. Anyway, if you open this up, there's a folder up here of composites for class from last spring. I'm going to leave those on here because when we get to doing troubleshooting compositing, we will work with your composites, but we will also work with other composites as well. So this is just a resource for you for later on. This do not use, delete. You don't need anything in here. It's just stuff that for permissions reason, I cannot throw it away. So I've just put it in a folder saying don't go there. So you're welcome to go in and look at anything in there. It's not like this is where I'm keeping my secrets, but anyway, it's just don't use it because I can't get rid of it. There's also Dropbox. This is where you're actually going to drop your homework. It's going to go actually into this box, and you cannot see inside of this. All you can do is drag your files on this. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to get rid of all of this right now, so hang on one second. Anyway, you'll also have a resource. Hang on one second. I should have done this ages ago, but looks like it's going somewhat fast. Okay, yay. So anyway, Dropbox is where you're going to drop your files. Okay, your assignment files, they all go here. What I end up doing is that I will create, so this is week number 3 right now. I create a folder called, you can't do any work, you can't see beyond this. Once you throw your stuff on Dropbox, you can't go look at it, you can't go in and remove it, you can't change it. If you need to remove, if you do something by mistake, you need to let me know, because this is protected so nobody can go in and screw with it. So nobody in this room who hates somebody else in this room can go in and throw all their shit away and then, no. You all love each other, right? Resources. If you look in resources, there's a complete set of assignments from last semester. It's really close to the ones from this semester. So if all of a sudden you're caught without something, this is where you can come find a version of it or just get in touch with me. There is some other stuff in here that we will get to later on. There's even a copy of our retouching workspaces in here. And then selects. And selects again, there is, I've got this in here. It's just got some green screen stuff in here that we will use later on. But for you guys, you take your homework and you just throw it in the Dropbox. Now, there's a naming convention for your homework. It should be on every one of the assignments listed, how you actually name your files. If you want, so the way my naming convention works is, for instance, you're going to have 4 camera profiles that you're going to turn in for the first assignment today. You could name every single one of them using the naming convention. Again, it starts with last name underscore first name underscore assignment number. So again, that would be assignment 2.1. That's our first assignment, the ones for the profile, the camera profiles. If you want to individually name each one, it would be 2.1.1 for the first profile, 2.1.2 for the second, 2.1.3 for the third, or you can simply create a folder that's got last name, underscore, first name, underscore, 2.1. Put all of your profiles in that folder and then just put the folder in here. You don't need to do the individual image numbering. Does that make sense, everyone? So you'll simply throw these in here. At the end of the class, I will put this screen back up so everybody can see the work that they actually submitted for this, and we're good to go. You don't need to do this right now because we're going to go on to other things, but before the day is over, I need everybody to submit their homework here. Any questions about this? Yes? It's exactly what whatever the assignment called for. Yeah. Okay. Questions about all of this? Are we good on all this? Okay. Did everybody bring their Wacom tablet today? I hope. I need you to get it out, turn it on, and plug it in because you're not going to be able to do the next step. Was everybody able to load the software for that Wacom tablet? Did we talk about it? I can't remember what we did or didn't do, so don't worry, we'll get to it right now. Don't worry about it. Just follow along on this. And if you didn't bring your Wacom tablet today, don't worry. You can't do what we're going to do, though, because we're going to set the preferences for the tablet, and you can't set them if you don't have the tablet plugged in. But you can follow the video tonight when you get home, and you'll be fine. Just plug it in tonight, and you'll be good to go. So if we actually go into our class session 2, week number 2 files. I think that's where it is. Nope. Week number 1 files. Yeah, week number 1 files. You will see at the bottom of the student files, week number 1, there is a Wacom tablet underscore 6.4.3-1.exe. That is for the Windows people. That is not Macintosh. That exe is a Windows installer. So for the Windows people, you want to go ahead and double click on that to run it. For the Macintosh people, you want to click on the Wacom tablet underscore 6.4.3-2. Double click on that, and I'll run through the installer as far as I can get, because mine's already installed. It will open up this. You double click on this, install Wacom tablet PKG, and then just every time it says it asks you something, say yes. If it asks you for access to your hard drive, say yes. If it asks for access to your documents folder, say yes. Anything it asks you to give access to, just say yes, 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 yes. If you get a security warning that comes up that's saying, well, this isn't in our register, you can't do that, let me know. Shoot.
So I downloaded the installer earlier. Will it not show up on this if you have the actual tablet plugged in? Or how do you search for that?
Have you already run the installer?
I believe I did, yeah.
Well, then we can find it.
Does it make one second?
Oh, yeah.
USB-C.
Yep. So is anybody running into error messages, warnings, anything? What's it saying? Okay, run it. Have you already run one? Then you don't need to run it again. so is everybody else, are we good? Can we move on, or are we still waiting? Okay, so to get to the part that we need to get to right now, let me turn my tablet on. For the Apple people, you come up to the Apple menu down to System Preferences or System Settings. If you're on System Preferences like me, at the very bottom, you'll have a Wacom tablet. You can click on that because that's where the preferences are that we're going to set. If you're on the newer version of Mac software, it's a really long list along the left-hand side. Go to the very bottom of that. You'll see Wacom tablet. Click on that. It should open up and look like this. If you're on Windows, I think this is considered a control panel, not a setting. So you want to do a search in Windows in your start menu for control panels, and it'll have the control panels for everything. And Mario, if it doesn't work, don't worry, because we're not using our Wacom tablets today. We're just going to set it up. You and I can look at it right after class. Is there anybody else in here on Windows? Okay, so if we can't find, can you find where your Wacom tablet settings are? I'm sorry, what? You need to do a search for it. Again, Windows is very all over the place about this stuff. Do a search for Wacom tablet. Does that show up? There's like 3 places to search. Let's look at this either during the break or right after class. Again, all we're doing is setting this. You'll see what's going on. Okay, so for everybody else, did you get this little screen that comes up and looks like this? Okay, so this is how you can customize your tablet. Most of you are brand new to tablets. My suggestion to you is you do not change any of your profiles. Stick with the defaults in here. Once you get used to working with your tablet, then you can go in and change things to be more towards your liking. So I'll point out to you really quickly what we would focus on and what not. So up at the very top of our screen, you can see that there's an application list. And if you click on the ones, it'll load anything else that might be sensitive. You'll see I've got a lot of other things in here that I could actually possibly do. And the reason they're doing this is that they are trying to say that you can customize your tablet to work differently in different programs. Now, that's a great feature from a software engineer point of view, but that just seems like a nightmare to me as a user. Why would I want my tablet to work one way in Photoshop and a completely different way in Illustrator? But anyway, they make it possible to do that. So I'm going to leave it at all other. I'm not going to include anything. We're going to set it up for everybody. If you want to add or subtract a specific application that's not showing, you can actually then just click on these pluses and minuses. I'm going to get rid of the older versions. I'm not going to spend time doing that right now. So anyway, I'm going to go back and just do for all other apps. Then there's a set of tabs that run along the top. The first one is the tablet itself. So if you click on the tablet, it'll know which one you've got. In my case, I have one that's similar to yours. I've got a set of 4 buttons on the very top of, I'm just watching the crutches go down, and there was nothing I could say. I'd probably leave them there. Anyway, buttons. That's what these things are right here. You can change the behavior of your button. So I can say, okay, the one on the very top right for me is set up as a modifier key. That would be a control key. You can click on this and come down and say, well, I don't want that. I would much rather have this be, here, if we look on keyboard, I would much rather it be my undo key. So you can change it. Again, I strongly suggest you leave this at the defaults to begin with, and then just know that there is things that you can modify to customize for yourself. If you find that you're doing something over and over and over again, you might want to dedicate one of these buttons to just be an undo. Does that make sense? But right now, I'm going to leave it as it is right now. Then if we click on the next thing over in the pen, you guys won't have a battery here. I've got a wireless Bluetooth version of this tablet. That's the only reason I have battery here. Yours plugged in, you have USB, it won't show. I'm going to go to the pen tab next. In the pen tab, this part actually matters. So if you pull this stylus out, there are 2 ends to your stylus. There's the pointy end and a blunt end. The pointy end is the positive part, works just like a pen. When you use it, you're actually adding a signal. You're putting, so it's like you're writing, you're putting stuff down. The other end is your eraser. So a lot of times when people first start working with tablets here, they make a mistake and they pick up and they start working with the eraser and they don't understand why shit isn't happening. It's just because you have your pen turned the wrong way. Make sure that you have you laugh at that. I've seen people tear their hair out over this shit. And it's just like, oh, don't do this, do that, and you'll be fine. You'll also notice on the very front of your pen towards near the nub, there's a rocker switch. There's two switches right there. There's one in the front and one in the back. They are separate. There's little buttons. You can actually use those to, again, do specific things. Like if you want to right click on your mouse, you can set up one of those two buttons to be a right click so that you don't have to hold down the control key to do a right click or anything like that. Does that sort of make sense? Again, you can change all of those things right here in these drop down menus. I suggest you leave it at the defaults until you get more comfortable with it. If you hover over your tablet using the stylus side down and actually press on it, you will see there is a current pressure. It will actually show you how hard you need to press to have a 100% mark put down. So you can see if you just tap it like here, I'm only getting half of my pressure on this, which means if I've got a black ink pen or brush in Photoshop and I hit it using only 50% pressure, it will only put down a middle gray. It will not put down the full black because I haven't pushed it down completely as hard. Does that make sense, everyone? So that's actually that part. This next thing down, the double click distance, most of you know, and I think this is true on Windows as well, when you hover over an image icon, it's one of your photographs, it's like on a hard drive, you can double click on that file to open it up, right? It automatically launches it to be loaded. However, if you do a long pause between your click, if you click once, pause, and click a second time, your computer does not treat that as a double click. So the time interval in between those two clicks is what you can adjust here with this double click distance. So again, if you turn it all the way up, you have a very long pause is considered a double click. All the way down, it's not. My suggestion again, leave this at its defaults. If we go to the next one, to mapping, this will be the last thing we actually do here. You'll see in my case, I can map either a pen or a mouse. The Wacom tablets has a whole series of tablets that actually have an independent mouse with it that works on the tablet. We don't have that. I've never used that in the ones that I've had in the past that had them. So anyway, for what it's worth. But the way the tablet is now laid out is that I'm going to actually take mine back to its default. And you'll see that the entire space of the tablet right here is mapped to my monitor. If you had multiple monitors here, you would actually have in a drop-down screen, you can go to monitor 1, monitor 2. If you have 3 or 4 monitors, you're able to map every single one of them. People who work in multiple monitors usually restrict their retouching to 1, so this would be a way for you to say, I only want to work on that monitor. I want my tablet to match the full screen of that monitor. Does that sort of make sense, everyone? So I will tell you, on even a single monitor situation, one of the things that I don't like about this version of the tablet, which is the same one that you guys have for the most part, is that this is a live area that goes all the way down to the bottom. So the very bottom corner of this is the bottom corner of my monitor. The other bottom corner is the other monitor. The top of where you get to the little lines that are little dots that are on here, that's the top corner on the right-hand side. This is the top corner on the left-hand side. It's mapped to be complete. But watch what happens, because this is how I work. So I'm just showing this to you. It just depends on if it drives you as nuts as it drives me. When I'm working on my tablet like this, it's fine. My hand is actually resting largely on the tablet. But when I want to work on the lower part of my image, half of my hand is on the tablet and the other half is on the desk, and I hate that. I hate everything about it. In the old Wacom tablets, they had this whole huge area around it so that when you put your hand down, it all stayed on the same level. But this, as I start to get close to the very edge, it gets really weird. It's horrible for me to try to do that. So what I do is I narrow down the live area of my tablet. I actually set the bottom of my tablet closer to basically a third of the way up, so that when I want to work on the bottom part, my hand is still on the tablet. To do that, you actually change this bottom. So I'm going to change this bottom tablet area to portion, and then it will say, okay, how do you want to do this? And you'll see you have live controls on here that you can actually change this. I actually drag mine up from the bottom so it kills this area. I still am mapping the entire screen. I'm going to my entire monitor, but I'm narrowing down the area where my tablet is actually live. So this line right here now is the bottom of my monitor. It's not the bottom of my tablet, but it is the bottom of my monitor. This is still the top and the right and the left. That part doesn't bother me. So I'm just saying to you guys, there are modifications that you can do here that actually make sense. So now if I touch the very, very bottom of my tablet, nothing happens. Yeah, I know, right? I don't want any of this shit. Go away. Now I'm going to have this thing reminding me of this shit forever. See the pain I feel for you guys? Anyway, that's basically how this whole thing works. So once you get through all of that, you can then close this thing up. Your tablet is now ready to rock. Any questions about any of that? All right. Let's actually work on something. Okay, let's do that. We're going to do the quick DNG profile thing. We're going to do this extremely fast. So this would have been your homework. So for those of you who fucked it up, you're turning the homework in today. If you turn it in today and it's correct, it'll be on time. It'll be grading accordingly. If you screwed it up or you didn't do it, you have 1 week to actually do this and get it turned in. You will take a 1 grade hit if you turn it in next week, but at least you'll get not a 0. If you don't turn it in next week and it goes late past that, you will get a 0 for the assignment. And that's true of all of them. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so go to your class files for session 3. And inside of that, you should be able to find, there's 2 files in here called gradient. There's gradients.psd and gradient v2. I want you to open up the first gradient. So again, in our session number 3 folders, there's a file called just plain gradients. If you can double click on that, it's a Photoshop file. It should load. Once it does load, you can see on my screen this is going to work. If I come up near the word that says Adobe Photoshop at the top and double click really quickly, it fills my screen but does not go beyond my screen, so all my palettes are contained. And then as far as the file itself, if you double click on the hand, it will actually make it as large as it can be without hiding anything. So this is basically where we're at. So does everybody have this file open? Anybody not? Okay. Selections, that's what we're basically going to deal with today. So I'm going to blow through the selection tools relatively fast, the ones that you probably already know. The ones that you don't know, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, but then we are going to try to do some extremely difficult, challenging selections and see how it goes. So to begin with, we are going to start at the very top of your screen. At the super very top of your screen, you should have the Move tool at the very top. Right underneath it is where the Marquee tool is. If you actually come in, it's got a flyout menu. It is the rectangular marquee tool. So once you select this rectangular marquee tool, you need to look up at the very top in your options. First off, you need to make sure that your feather is set to 0. That's basically saying how sharp do you want the edge of your selection to be. In this case, we want very sharp. I'll show you what feathering does in just a second. You also, in the style, if you click on your style drop down, you will see that you can do normal, which is basically freehand. Then you can actually do a fixed ratio, which will then give you a ratio. So for instance, if you wanted to only select perfect squares, you could put in a ratio of 1:1 and everything you selected would then become a square. And then finally, fixed size. So if you wanted to specifically say, I want an area of this that is 300 pixels by 400 pixels, it'll allow you to put those values in here. And then when you go down to your image and select, it will only select that. But for us, we're going to leave it at normal. And then I'm simply going to come down to my screen and click and drag out, and it does a square or a rectangular selection. So I need everybody to do this rectangular selection. To get rid of your selection, you hit Command D, or for Windows people, Control D. It gets rid of it. However, there's more to doing these selections than just that. So if you click, I need everybody to hit Command D or Control D to deselect. I want you to click and drag. Now, typically when I do my drag stuff, whatever, I start top left and go to bottom right like this. I need everybody to do that, but do not let go of your mouse when you do this. Keep it still controlled like this so you can still move it around. But then I want you to add the space bar. If you hold down your space bar, you'll see it no longer changes its dimension. It changes where the position is. And if you take this square now and you jam it into the top left-hand corner, you'll see that it goes all the way up to the top left corner, but then you can control the bottom right corner as you start to pull out. But I want you to push it up in the top so that it does the top right corner. Let go of the space bar, and this will keep this selected perfectly at the 0, 0 mark in the top left of your image. How many of you have ever tried to make this selection and you can't make it? Because when your cursor gets right to that part, if you go just a little bit more, it becomes the cursor. It's no longer the selection tool. This is how you make those perfect selections like that. Then you can simply set the bottom. So if I only wanted to select the area above the red, this allows me to perfectly select that, and I've got the marching ants there. Make sense? Command D to deselect. Simply click in the middle and drag out a selection, just like I've just got one kind of in the middle, and hit Command J. Command J is the command for jump. If you come over to your layers palette now and take a look, you should have a second layer. You've got two of them now. The original one that opened that was background, but then you'll see one that's sitting up on top of it that's got some checkerboard around it. If you turn off the eyeball for the background layer, the bottom layer, you'll see this is what the selection is made that you just created. So while we're here, this part's important. See how sharp the edges are on this image right here? That's because I had my feathering set to 0. But what I want you to know now is this. We can select this again. And the way you do it is the way we make selections of everything going forward. So this isn't only going to apply to layers. This applies to channels, it applies to paths, it applies to masks, it applies to everything. If you hover your cursor over the icon, do not put it over the label. Mine says layer 1. Don't put your cursor over that. Don't put it over on the layer, further out, whatever. Hover it over the icon itself, and you'll notice you get a little hand symbol. If you add the command key to that or the control key, you will see that what gets added to it, it still stays the hand, but you get this square that's a little marching ant square that's been added to this. Click on that icon and you will see you get the marching ants again. What this does is it loads anything that you are hovering over. Does that make sense? So we are going to talk about making these selections all the time. That is the way you do it. I'm going to hit Command D again to deselect. I'm going to throw this thing away. I'm going to then, again, the shortcut for marquee tool, if you need to get back to it, is just the M key, but we've still got it selected. I'm going to change the feathering this to 20 pixels. So go ahead and type in 20 pixels up in the options bar at the very top. Hit the Enter key or the Return key to enter that value, and then do another selection right in the middle and hit Command J again to jump it. Then turn off the light, the eyeball on the background layer, just like we did before, so you can see the edge. And you can see that what feathering does is it makes a very, very, very soft edge when you actually do this selection part. That's what feathering is all about. Are we good on that part? Remember, if you do your feathering, which a lot of people do for certain work here, and that's fine, just remember that this is sticky. You need to go back and change the feathering of that pixel, the pixels of the feather back to 0, so that it's back to its more normal behavior. You can throw away layer 1 again. Now we're going to do one more, select and drag out in the very middle. You can save selections. So I've just got a square that's going on here. I'm going to come up to the select menu, down to save selections. This becomes critical. If you are doing really complex, you're spending an hour building a selection, you better save that mother. So I'm going to come down to save selection, and I'm just going to call this rectangle 1, REC1, and say OK. Hit Command D to deselect. What you'll notice now is that if you come up to the select menu and, well, I take it back, don't go to the select menu. Instead, go over to your channels first and scroll down to the very bottom of your channels palette. And you will see down at the very bottom, there's this thing that we call an alpha channel. And it's also, it looks just like a layer mask that was that selection, and it's also named Rec1. This is what we just saved. When we saved a selection, it just makes it as another channel. And you can have unlimited number of these. You can have millions of these. There is no limit to the number. They don't impact your image. They're just there as saved selections. So if I want to load the selection again, I can come up to the select menu and I can come down to load selection. A window will open up, and in the drop-down menu underneath, it will allow me to pick my Rec1. And I could pick that and say OK, and it will load the selection. I've got the marching ants again. Hit Command D to deselect. The better way of doing it is hovering over the icon. Again, not the channel, not the name Rec1, not the more layer part of it near the command stick, not any of that part. Over the icon. Hold down your control key or command key, again, command, Mac, control, Windows, click on that, it loads the selection again. You load all of our selections doing this same keyboard shortcut and clicking on it. Is everybody good on that part? Okay, so I've got a selection going right now. I want to actually do another selection here as well. So if I want to add to this selection, if I simply don't do this, just watch my screen. If I click and do another selection, the original one goes away and it starts a brand new one. That's the behavior of almost all the tools. Not all of them, but it's the behavior of all these manual selection tools. It's not the behavior of the quick selection tool. But anyway, other than that, it is. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back. So I've got my original selection. If I want to add to this selection, I want to keep the original one, but I want to add to it, you hold down your Shift key. And you will see that it, next to the icon, it puts a little plus next to it. And now when you click and drag out, you can actually expand that selection. So now I've got a really weird looking offbeat selection part here. If you want to do the opposite and subtract, you hold down the Option key. And you'll notice again, it puts in a little minus sign right next to the crosshairs. So now I can click and drag out, and you will see it subtracts that from this the original selection that I have going. You can subtract stuff from the middle, again, holding down the Option key, click, and you can drag sort of it's not really a donut, it's a square donut, otherwise known as a scronut. That was really lame, wasn't it? Yeah. Is this all making sense, everyone? Okay, Command D to deselect. I wanted to actually make another selection, just something different from the original one, but I want you to do it in such a way that it overlaps the original one. So remember, we had something in the middle-ish kind of square in there, so I'm just going to drag something out really big. And I'm going to save this selection, and I'm going to call this Save Selection, and I'm going to call it Rec2. And say OK. If you look at the very bottom of your channels palette, you'll see that you've got a Rec2 now that's been saved as well. You've still got the marching ants going. I'm going to hit Command D to deselect, and now I want to actually combine these together, which you can do in various different ways. So I'm going to hover over my Rec1 thumbnail. Again, you've got to hover over the thumbnail, not the name, the thumbnail. Hold down the Command key and click to load that as a selection. But now I want to actually add the other selection as well to it, or not necessarily add it, have it interact. If I go back and I actually hover over this and load this as a selection, it just changes it. That's not going to work for me. So what I want to do is, again, force them to interact with one another. So instead, you use the select menu for that. Up to the select menu, down to load selection. In your drop-down menu now, you've got Rec1, but you've also got Rec2. So I'm going to select Rec2. You could invert this selection, which would mean instead of the rectangle itself, it would select everything else except for the rectangle. In our case, we don't want to do that. But then these operations right here control how those two things interact. I've got a current selection going. That was my Rec 1. If I want to add to it, I simply click on the Add to Selection button and say OK, and now it gives me the whole big group it's put together. Make sense? Hit Command Z to undo that put together. Right back to the Select menu again, down to Load Selection. We're going to again use the drop-down menu to come down to Rec 2, and in this case, instead of adding, I'm going to subtract it from the selection and say OK. And now you can see it removes it, so I only have about half of what my original Rec 1 was. Hit Command Z to undo that, and finally we are going to do an intersection of the two. So up to the Select menu, down to Load Selection, and at the very bottom, the intersection of both. Again, you need to use your drop-down menu to add Rec 2. Click on the intersect, and you will see what this is only going to give me area that was common to both of the original selections. So if you say OK to this area that's still going on right now was in both of those selections. It was part of both of them. So it's simply a way to merge selections if you need to, if you want to. Once you've gotten them saved, it's really simple to do. Questions about any of this? All right, Command D to deselect. If you grab the selection tool again, if you click and drag out, just as a rectangle, if you add the Shift key, this is before you let go, don't let go, hold down the Shift key, it will restrict it to having equal ratio for width and height. So you'll only get squares on this. So no matter what you do, you'll only get squares on this. If you let go, hit Command D to deselect again. In this case, what I want to do is I actually want to target the center of my selection in a very specific spot. To do that, I actually want to pull guidelines down onto my image. Now, right now, if you don't have your ruler showing, if you take a look at my screen, I've got a ruler on the very top of my image and one on the left side of it. There's nothing on the right or the bottom part. You don't need them there. All you need is, again, this is a two-dimensional image. All you need is width and height in this. So that will work. To get your rulers to show, if they're not, come up to the View menu and come down to Rulers and put a check mark next to that Rulers. Then you will get rulers on both sides. Now in my case, mine is giving me a readout in pixels. You can change how that is. If you prefer to work in inches or any of that, hover your cursor over either the ruler, the one at the top or the one on the left side, hold down your Control key to get your drop-down menu, click on it, and you can pick any of these to actually have it be the unit of measure that you prefer to work in. So if you want to work in inches, I typically work in pixels 99% of the time. It's a fixed set for me. It doesn't matter how zoomed in or zoomed out I am. It's always the same value. It never changes. So anyway, that's just me. So then to pull a guideline out, hover over the ruler that's at the very top, click on it and drag down. It will pull out a guideline. In my case, it's a cyan line right here. The color of these guides is set up in your preferences. We looked at it earlier. So if we were working with a cyan image, we would not want a cyan guideline. We could actually change that to see where it is. On Windows people, again, your preferences are down at the bottom of your edit menu. For the Mac people, it's up here at the top and it's preferences, and it'll be under transparency. No, it's going to be under guides and grid slices. If you open this up, this is where the guide, it's set to a cyan color. You would simply click on this and change it to another color if you were working on a cyan image so you could see it. I'm going to say OK to that, and now I'm going to actually do another one. I'm going to grab another guide on the left ruler and drag it out so that I've got a center point right here. So I want my image to do a selection. I want to do a square that is perfectly centered over the intersection of these two guidelines. It's impossible to do it if you're going to just start, even though you can click and drag out and hold down your Shift key to make it a square. There's no, I mean, you're guessing as about whether you can actually get that to line up, to have that center part be, because it starts from a corner to a corner. Instead, what I want to do is have it do a selection where the behavior is starting at the center and expanding out equally. To do that, I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. hover your cursor right over the over the intersection of those two guidelines. Hold down your control key and the shift key. What control key? Let me see if that's worked. No, it's not the control key, it's the command key. Hover over it again, hold down command and click. Nope, that's going to give me that. Do that. Option key, that's what it is. So, hang on one second. Hover over the intersection of this again. Hold down your option key, but remember, I want a square. So you need to add the shift key as well. So now I'm holding down option and shift. Click on that and then start to pull out. And you can see it's giving me a perfect square, but it's also starting. The point that I started is my center point. And let go. And now you've got a square that's perfectly centered on the intersection of those guidelines. Hit Command D to deselect. To get rid of your guidelines, come up to the View menu, come down to Guides, and over to Clear Guides. So look up at my screen to see where I'm at. To get rid of the guidelines, up to the View menu, down to Guides, over to Clear Guides, and let go, and it gets rid of them. Are we good on this part? Okay. If you go to the next icon down in that select menu, you have the elliptical marquee tool. If you don't do anything, again, I'm leaving the feather at 0, the style is at normal. I'm going to click and just drag out. It will do ellipses for you. If you add the shift key, it will make perfect circles for you. You can do the very same thing we did before. Hold down the space bar and move shit around. You can let go then and save your selections, up and save and call it circle 1. All of those things work the same. If you want to add to this, you can hold down the shift key and click and it'll add another circle to it. If you hold down the option key, it will subtract from it. They're all basically the same. That's how this whole thing works. Are we good on this part? Okay, Command D to deselect. There are two other options that exist in this. There is a single row and a single column. Nobody really uses that anymore, but I'll tell you why it's there. It used to be, and this actually can happen to you, if you've got an old enough camera, you can actually have an entire row of pixels that is dead. What happens is that if you imagine your sensor in your camera being a square or a rectangle, every single row of pixels has got an electric contact next to it that will then read that entire row. What are the values in that entire row? If that electrical connection fails, you will have this empty row of pixels that exist in your image. Now, in most cases, it's too small to see. Even though it goes all the way across your image, it's too small to see because it's only a pixel wide or a pixel tall. Those allow you to make a selection of just that row of pixels that you could then clone stamp over to fix it or do whatever. Other than that, I don't know any reason to actually use those guys. Nobody uses them. Make sense? Okay, one last thing we're going to do. Another big square again. I don't care whether you don't have to hold down, or a big rectangle right in the middle again. You can transform your selections. Now, most people think that you would come up to the Edit menu down to Transform. That is not going to work here. This is to transform image content. What we want to transform is the selection. You do that through the Select menu. Up to the Select menu, down to Transform Selection. When you do that, you'll get a set of coordinate marks on here. These are control points. So this will allow me to control the width. And well, you can just select on it. You can click on, I'm going to click on the point in the very middle of the top. You'll see once you do it, you'll get a double-headed arrow. You can make it taller or you can make it smaller. So it's a way to simply refine your selection. If you click on one of the corners, it will do width and height as well. It's just a way to modify that. For me, this isn't all that useful or all that helpful, but there's one thing about this that is incredibly helpful, and you get to you really get to it in one place. If you look at the very top of your options bar up here, you'll see that there's 3 little icons at the top. There's one that sort of always has looked like a graph to me. That's actually the warp tool. We're going to get back to that in a second. The other is that there is a circle with a line through it. This is a option that'll be in a lot of your tools. It basically means you just want to get out of here without doing anything. And then there's a check mark, and the check mark is also, again, it's saying, yeah, whatever you did, I want to accept that. So we haven't changed, well, actually, I have changed mine. So if I were to click on the circle with the icon through it, it will undo the transform that I've done. The check mark will go ahead and commit the transform. the change. But if you select the thing that looks like it looks like a warped graph up at the very top, this is the warp tool. And if you click on that, now what you see is you've got coordinates in the corners where we had them before, but you've also got control handles that exist all the way around here. Every single one of these little blue dots is a control handle. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to grab the one on the lower right-hand side. I'm going to grab that control handle, click and drag out, and you can see it's modifying the border of this selection. Then I'm going to grab one on the very top, more towards the left-hand side, and pull down. You can see that this allows you to truly organically map your selection to any weird thing that's in your image, and this can get incredibly precise. So if you've got some weird shaped thing that's actually got hard edges to it, you can use this tool to actually build your selection. So to go ahead and commit this, come up to the window, up to the very options bar, click on the check mark, and now we've got this weird shaped selection that we've transformed. Does this make sense, everyone? I gotta be honest with you, this is a game changer. There are times where you just cannot get a selection right, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I can go in and manually do this guy. Anyway, Command D to deselect. The next tool down on the toolbars is the lasso tool. Again, if you click on its flyout menu, you'll see there is a selection brush tool. This is really just the quick mask tool made into a menu item. That's all it is. I don't really use this, but it basically allows you to brush a selection, which is what you've always been able to do with the quick mask tool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it right now. We don't really use this a whole lot, so don't worry about it. Where I do care about, though, is what's underneath it. It is the lasso tool. If you select that, this will allow you to do a freeform selection. All the selection tools work with this one the same as they do. Again, you have a feathering on here. If you hold down the shift key, you get a plus. If you hold down the option key, you get a minus. It's all the same tools in here. Command D to deselect. Go back up to the lasso menu, down to the next one, the polygonal lasso tool. This was the first tool that was made that actually Photoshop actually started to introduce some content awareness of the image. And what I mean by that is, I take it back, that's going to be the next tool down. What this tool does is it's sort of like, it's just you lay down line segments. That's basically the best way I can describe this works. If you come over to your image and you click once, it'll actually lay down a point to you, an anchor point, and then as you start to move your cursor away, it will have a line that connects the two. If you click again, that will become part of your selection. Click again, another part of your selection. Click again, click again, click again. You can click as many times as you want and make it the weirdest selection in the world. But then when you get back to your origin point, you'll see when you hover right over the point where it started, your cursor will change and give you this sort of like weird shaped little thing. If you click then, it will complete the selection. If you Command D to undo that and do the same thing again, but you're lazy and you don't want to actually try to connect them again, so I'm not going to draw the line up there. I'm simply going to double click and it will complete the last section for you. Again, Command D to deselect. The next tool that's down on the toolbar in the lasso tools is the magnetic lasso tool. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the first one where you've got a selection tool that's really looking at the image. So if you hover over the intersection where the red bar, the top of the red bar is meeting the gradient, and you click and you start to just drag, I'm still holding my mouse down, you just drag, it's just dropping down points. These are actually points that you would use to actually build a to build a path. You'll notice though, if you bring it down into the middle of the red, it gets lost. All it can do is really look for edges, and if you're in an area that doesn't have edges, it's just guessing. But if you come down to the bottom again, it will actually pick up that bottom edge again, and so this will allow you to work your way through it. And then again, when you get back to the beginning, you let go or double click and it will complete the selection. Again, in its day when this was first shown, people went wild about this, but there's so much more advanced selection tools now, nobody uses this. Command D to deselect. So that is the last one here. The magnetic let all these toolbar menu items here are sticky. So if you leave this on the magnetic lasso tool, it's going to always work that way. So if you want to mess around with your roommates who really have pissed you off, go into their Photoshop, set it to a different tool here, add some feathering to it. They'll never figure the feathering out if they don't know how to work this guy, whatever. And then they'll just, every time they want to use the lasso tool, this is going to happen to them. Yeah, anyway, how to mess with your, used to be, can you tell I've had really shitty roommates in my life? Okay, you really hate your roommate. If they have a tablet, a graphic tablet that's plugged in, you can't do this with a Bluetooth one because you got to turn it on, but if it's plugged in, it will always be on when they go into Photoshop. Take the graphics tablet. If there's any place you can hide it behind a screen, hide it behind the telephone, whatever, just hide it somewhere so they can't really see it, even though they'll know, you know, oh yeah, and then simply lay the stylus on top of it. It will take over control of their entire screen. Their mouse won't work. It will only stay, and it drives your computer insane. So it's just shit starts, you know, you start to make your mouse to hover over, click over, so all of a sudden your cursor will shoot up to the top right hand corner and then down to the left. I mean, it'll just be all over the place, whatever. It's maddening. Anyway, another way to fuck with your friends and relatives. Okay, any questions about the selection tools so far? Okay, this would be another great time. Again, I'm being as kind as I can to you guys because I need you to stay awake for this. 9-minute break now, a hard one. Be back at 3:30, and we will pick this up. Okay, so back in Photoshop. So next tool down that we're going to actually deal with, you come over again. I'm going to change my magnetic lasso tool back to just the normal lasso tool. And then we're going to go to the next tool down. And if you click on the next tool down, this is where you start to get into the auto selection parts. This is now much more advanced. This is where Photoshop really does analyze what's in your image and tries to help you build selections based on that. The object selection tool, I'm going to pass over that right now. It's an automated selection tool. It does what a lot of other tools will do, so I'm going to avoid that right now. The quick selection tool we're going to come back to. I want to start with the magic wand tool. So if I can get everybody to select the magic wand tool. We've already been here once before because this is where we actually set up. Again, remember, this tool controls how a lot of the selection tool brushes behave. So this is how you set tolerance for them and how you set the sample size for them. I want to make sure this gets to, instead of having in your sample size, instead of point sample, which is what the default is, I want you to change that to 3x3. You will in all likelihood leave it there for the rest of your life. For the tolerance, we're going to leave it at 32, and I will talk to you about what tolerance is in just a second. But what this tool does is that it actually is going to look for, it's really based on tone as much as it is on anything, more so than really color. It's really more on tone. And what it does is it says, okay, the way it's set up right now, it's going to say, all right, you're going to select a sample point on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that thing that you landed on, whatever the number was that you landed on. And then I'm actually going to do 32 levels lighter than that and 32 levels darker than that. That's what this whole tolerance thing is about. So to see what I'm really talking about, what I want you to do is I want you to uncheck up here in your options part, uncheck this anti-alias. I'll show you why that is in just a second. And make sure contiguous is not checked as well. We've only got one layer in here, so you don't need to worry about that. And then I simply want you to hover over the gradient in the very top part, but then I want you to look up at the info palette readout. And what I'm looking for is for you to find a tone in there that is 100, 100, 100. So I'm going to push mine a little bit to the left. So basically what we're looking for are the tones that would fall right under. So this is a tone of gray. Remember, our grayscale works from 0 to 255. 0 is black, 255 is white. This 100 is a kind of a darkish gray. Does that make sense, everyone, what's going on? And then I simply want you to click once. And what you'll notice is that it's actually giving you selections on the top and on the bottom as well. And none of the red is selected in the middle. I want you to jump this to its own layer, Command J. If you then turn off the background layer that's underneath it and take a look at this, come up here to what you can actually see that's visible up here. If you start to hover your cursor over the very edge where it goes, I'm on the right-hand side of one of these selections right now, or not selections, but one of these hunks of pixel that were actually jumped to this thing. You'll notice in my readout I get to a 131, and then I almost go to the right, I get to a 132, and then it jumps out onto. So what this did was, and then I'm going to do the opposite side as well. I'm going to go to the left-hand side and get as close as I can to that intersection. You see I get down to a 68, and then as the minute I go further to the left, it jumps out as well. So what it did was it clicked on, it selected that pixel, that row, everything in my image that had a value of 100, 100, 100, plus 32, which got me on the one side up to 132, minus 32, which gets me down to 68. So now it's selected everything from a 68 to a 132. Does that make sense, everybody, what just happened here? That's what tolerance is all about. But you'll also notice that that's a very, very, very kind of jaggedy, still jarring kind of line on the edges of this. If you throw away this layer that we just did that with, or just click on it and hit the delete key, it'll get rid of it. We're going to do the same trick again, but this time I want to click on anti-alias, and I also want to click on contiguous. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find on my info readout, I'm going to look for that 100, 100, 100, and click on it. And now you'll notice that it only grabs the ones at the very top. What I just did was when I click on the contiguous, what I'm saying to Photoshop is that this selection has to be touching the original spot that you picked. It needs to be a part of that. If for any reason it is broken in your image, and what's breaking it in my image right now is this big red line, I don't want you to select those other things. I just want you to select just this. If you wanted to select everything in your image that would fall in this range, then you uncheck that contiguous. But contiguous just means it's got a touch, right? And the minute I got to my 132 border up here, it ended. The minute I got to my 68 border down here, it ended. And the minute I hit this red, it ended. So that's why I don't have the same thing going on underneath. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so I'm going to hit Command J again to jump that to its own selection. I'm going to turn off the eyeball. And now you can see that the edge of this line looks a little bit smoother. That's what anti-aliasing is all about. If you zoom into this, like way into this, you'll actually see that what it's trying to do is it's trying to create this sort of like jagged edge, which in theory as a selection would appear smoother to you. It would seem more organic. Instead of having a line that looked like it was cut with a razor blade and a ruler, it gives you some variation in here. It softens up that selection without actually feathering it. Does that make sense, everybody, what's going on? Okay. So that's going to be the magic. So I'm going to double click on the hand again to jump all the way back out. I'm going to throw away that layer that I just jumped. I'm going to turn on the eyeball of the other one. And then I'm going to again click on the magic wand tool. Make sure that everything is set up the way I had it set up. And I'm simply going to click on the red, anywhere in the red. It doesn't matter where. And it does a perfect selection of the red. If you have a hardcore graphic element in Photoshop, the magic wand tool can be the best tool in the world there is to select it. But it really is these kind of really hard edges. Not that many people use this tool, but on the few occasions where you've got something that is this hardcore and outlined and separated out, the magic wand tool can do a remarkable job at selecting it. All right, Command D to deselect. The next tool down, it's not really the one down, it's the one above it, the quick selection tool. We actually worked with the quick selection tool when we did the castle exercise last week. It still works the same way. This tool though, however, if you look up at the options palette, you'll notice that instead of the first brush, which is the how all the other selection tools work, this first brush that is not selected, but the first one, look at my screen to see where I'm talking about. This, if you actually have it selected, every time you use the quick selection tool, it will start a brand new selection. It will it will deselect what you've already selected and start a brand new one every single time. Most of the time people want to use this tool in a cumulative fashion, so the default for this is to actually have the second brush over, which has got the little plus added to it, meaning that you can draw out and make a selection with it, but then you can go to someplace else and continue to add to that selection. And that's what we're going to do. There's also a third brush over there that's got a minus attached to it, and what that does is it's saying, okay, for every successive stroke that you do with this tool, we are going to subtract from the selection, but we're not going to start something over again. So I'm going to hover over the upper left-hand corner of my image. It is a brush. You control it as a brush. So if you use the bracket keys that are just to the right of the P key, you can make the bracket key, the open bracket key that is right next to just to the right of the P key, makes your brush smaller just by clicking on it. The closed bracket key that is to the right of that makes your brush larger. So remember, with this tool, you do not want to touch the edge. It looks for edges. That's all it does. You don't want to touch the edge you want it to find, because if you touch the edge, it's going to start looking past that edge for the next edge. So to see what I mean, you can click on the top left-hand corner and just start to work your way over, and it uses artificial intelligence to predict what it is you really want to select. So it knows that I'm striking across this. It knows that I never touched the red, so it completes this selection for me, and it does a pretty good job of it. If you come down to this gradient in the bottom underneath the red, we're going to do the same thing, and you'll see it does not get rid of the original selection, it simply adds. So I'm going to grab now on the bottom one and click and drag across, and now I've got both the upper and the lower gradient are selected by this tool. If I hit Command J, it will jump those to its own layer, and you can see this is what it ultimately looks like, and it does a really good job of it. But if I hit Command Z to undo that, Command D to deselect everything, and now I'm going to I'm going to start again, and so I have no selection going, Command D, up in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to click and come down, and you can see the minute I cross the red line, it no longer is looking for this red line on the top. It goes to the very next one down. So again, never touch the line you want it to find. If you do, it will not respect that. It will simply look for the next line further away. Make sense? All right, Command D to deselect that. There's a set of selection tools that don't exist. They're not really tools over here at all. However, they do the same work as a selection tool, and we need to briefly look at those. So the next one we're going to look at is the color range tool. If you come up to your select menu and you come down to color range, a dialog box will actually open up, and your dialog box may look different than mine, stranger than mine, whatever. A lot of this has to do with whatever your default color is when you whatever your foreground color is when you establish this part. But we're going to go over what's in this dialog box and talk about it and how you can use it and how you don't use it and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to start with the drop-down menu. So everybody's got the color range boxes opened up. Okay, so even though it says color range, it will actually do tones as well. It treats gradients as selectable. It's not only going to look for the reds. If you click on the drop-down menu, you can see that the very top is sampled colors. This is what most people use because it gives you an eyedropper. You can go in and you can literally pinpoint a color that you want to be selected. However, there's also a range of pre-selections in here, so you can select only the reds, the yellows, the greens, the cyans, the blues, and the magentas. The problem with using this tool to do that is that those numbers in there, those ranges, what they're calling reds, is determined by Photoshop, and you can't really change a whole lot of it. You can skew things a little bit, but it's pretty much a very fixed set. And what Photoshop calls as reds, you may not call as reds. What you're calling as magentas might be red. I mean, my point being is that these are all predetermined canned ranges for you, and most people want more flexibility than that. So I don't know anybody who uses these pre-canned numbers. There is also a highlight selection. So go ahead and come down and click on highlights and you'll see what it actually does. So it's picked this range that it says, okay, this is what we think are highlights. So in your images, you are probably looking at this. You're not seeing it on your big screen like I am. You're just seeing the little preview down here in the bottom. Is that correct? If you want to see, the preview down at the bottom is too small for me. If you want to see this reflected on your image, you go to the drop-down selection preview menu at the very bottom of this, click on it and go from none to grayscale. And then your image will mirror what's going down in the little selection area here. So in this, areas that are white are completely selected, areas that are black are not selected at all, and areas of gray that are in between are partially selected. So the whiter that gray is, the more the image is selected. The darker that gray is, the less it's selected. So with highlights selected, go ahead and hit OK. You'll see that you get a set of marching ants on here, although it doesn't really give you the sense of that edge being as feathered as it really is. Hit Command J so that we can see what it really is, and this is what it is selected as my highlights. And you can see on the right hand side it's fully selected, and it stays pretty fully selected until we start getting into the left hand side of this where it starts to fade off. That is being controlled by that gradient of the selection that I just made. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, I'm going to throw this guy away. That top layer, I'm going to go back to the select menu down to color range again. So you can see that we've got highlights are selected. This fuzziness slider that's up at the top has an impact on that gradient. The area where I'm transitioning from being selected to not being selected, you can control using this fuzziness slider. So if you bring the fuzziness way down, it gives you a really hard edge. If you crank the fuzziness way up, it gives you a really long extended gradient. It's just controlling that that fall off, for lack of a better way of putting it. I'm going to drag mine back to 32, just so that we're all on the same page. The range then that's underneath that, that's how you can tell Photoshop what you think a highlight really is. Because right now Photoshop is not only giving me highlights, it's giving me quarter tones, it's actually moving very close into the mid-tone ranges in this as well. I don't call that highlights. I actually think that's too broad. So to restrict it, you can use the range, and this range goes from 0 to 255. So if you click on this and drag it up, so let's say go up to like a 225 or a 230, you can see I'm narrowing down that range, what I consider to be a highlight. Does that make sense, everyone, what's going on here? Okie dokie. You've got the same thing for midtones and shadows. And again, you can control the fuzziness, you can control the range, you can control all of that. The last thing down in this group is skin tones. And what this does is it actually selects Caucasian skin tones, which is a very limited group of skin tones to me. So I don't know anybody who uses this tool. If you want to select skin tones, you're much better off using the thing at the very top, which is the sampled color. Because if you select that, then anything that you pick in Photoshop, again, wherever your cursor lands, it will look at a 9 square, because again, we set this up to have our sample range be a 3 by 3 pixels. 3 times 3 is 9 pixels, so it's going to take that average, whatever's right underneath your cursor, it's going to take that, and then it's going to apply the selection depending on whatever you've put into this. So for me, I'm going to leave my fuzziness at a 32. And then I'm going to do the same trick that we did before. So I'm going to do a 32 in terms of my localized colors is off. Then I'm going to hover over the top gradient here because I want to do the very same thing that we did using the color range tool. I'm sorry, the magic wand tool. I want to do the very same thing. So I'm looking to find my info readout as 100, 100, 100, and I'm simply going to click once. This is now what has been selected. Now the fuzziness again controls that ramp out from when I'm going to fully selected to not. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this and jump this to its own selection. Command J. turn off the one underneath it, and you can see that unlike the magic wand tool, this has got a much softer gradient going from fully selected into the middle to completely unselected out on the edges. Most people, instead of using the magic wand tool to build an in-image selection, will use color range because it tends to be far more organic. You don't pick up those really hard edges that you do with the magic wand tool. With the magic wand tool, it looks like you've gone in with an X-Acto knife and you've cut something out. With the color range tool, you get these really soft organic selections that, especially when you're doing compositing work, this isn't necessarily going to work for you very well. But when you're trying to do tonal correction and stuff like that on a very specific area of your image, whatever, this is a great tool to actually use. It also picks everything in your image that falls into that range. So again, this is picking everything in the range. What's happening is that as you start in the very middle at that 100, 100, 100, it selects that at 100%. As you start to move out, you'll actually see I can get all the way out to a 64, or to a 68 before this completely falls off. So, well, I get to 74 before it completely falls off. Anyway, does that make sense what's going on here? So it's a tool that to keep in the back of your mind that does an extraordinary job given the situation, a specific situation that you're actually looking for. Okay. You can close this image up. You do not need to save that. You do need to go back to our session 3 files. And in that session 3 files, you will have a select and mask practice file. Can everybody find this? So again, in our session 3 files, come down to select and mask and double click on that guy to open it up. If you get this color warning, that's a good sign, because what it's saying is that the embedded color profile of this is sRGB, but we are using the working space RGB, Adobe RGB. If you did not get this warning coming up, you do not have your preferences set correctly. And this is a major one, because it basically means it's going to fuck up all your images. So did anybody not get this warning? Nobody wants to admit it. So this is what happens. I'm going to cancel out of this. If you're on a Macintosh, you go to the edit menu, down to color settings, and in the drop down settings for pre-can settings, you want to make sure you have North American Pre-Press 2, which gives you Adobe RGB as your working space, and also this US web-coded swap is your CMYK space, but it also turns on all of these warnings. These warnings right here are what just came up, telling me that this image is not in Adobe RGB. I'm fine with that. I don't need to care about that. So anyway, if you're on, so this is where it is not only on Macintosh, but this is also where it is on Windows. All right, so I'm going to hit cancel out of here because mine is set correctly. I'm going to go back to that file again. I'm going to double click on it again. I'm just going to say use the embedded profile instead. I don't care, and just say OK. I'm going to double click on the hand again to get it as big as it can get. And now what you'll see is you've got a file that's got 2 layers. If you turn off the eyeball of the top layer, you'll see it's a beach layer behind it, and then it's just a profile of a girl. Looks like it's shot in the studio. So I want to use the select and mask workspace to build this selection, to make a selection of this. It gives me more tools than some of the stuff that we've used before, although I would say that the color range actually might work kind of good on this background, but the problem is it's going to be really close to her skin tone as well, so I'm worried that it's going to select that part, so I don't really think it's the best tool. So anyway, but I also want to show you select and mask. So to get to the select and mask, if you have a selection tool already selected, like you have the marquee tool selected, you'll see right up here you'll have a select and mask icon, a button you can click on. But if you don't, if you've got like a move tool, that doesn't exist. Where you can always find it is in the select menu. So no matter what tool you have selected, come up to the select menu, make sure that you have the top layer selected, because the top layer, what I want to do is I want to build a selection of the background. I want to use that as a layer mask to hide the background so that I end up with the girl's profile and all of her hair in a beach scene. This is our first composite. I know, how exciting. I wish I had a better image to do this with, but that's okay. Anyway, so to the select menu, down to select and mask. It will actually open up into a completely different space. And hang on one second. Yeah, don't worry. When you're in your different space, your screen may look different than mine. Once we set some things up, hopefully it will look the same. So the first thing that we need to set in this is the view. So if you come over to your properties, again, we are a completely different workspace right now. It's still happening inside of Photoshop, but this is, you can see, I've got a very different set of toolbars on the side over here, and I've got a completely different set. I've got properties still exist, but I've got all this other shit that's happening over on the other side. This is not my normal Photoshop workspace. So the first thing we need to do is set the view mode. So if you click on the drop down for the view mode, you want to select onion skin. This is where we're going to start. And then if you just simply click outside of that, the fly down menu will go away. Underneath this, you've actually got a transparency slider. So what the select and mask tool space is trying to do is it's trying to show you what actually is selected and what is not selected, but also give you the benefit of being able to see the layer that's underneath it at the same time. So if you take your transparency slider and you crank it all the way to the right to 100%, you will see you don't see the profile anymore. All you see is the underlying layer. If you drag that profile, the transparency all the way to 0, all the way to the left-hand side, you only get the profile. You don't get any of the beach. If you go in the 50% range, you get half and half. Now in this image, 50% works really well, but there are other images where you might want to adjust the transparency to give you more separation between the figure and the background, or between your two selection areas. Does that make sense, everyone? So a lot of times people will turn this on and all of a sudden it's like, wow, you only see the whole background part. That's only because you haven't set the transparency correctly. You had it set at something else. Again, this dialog box unfortunately is sticky, so however you set it up today is how it will be tomorrow unless you change this. But then we need to look at the tools that are on the left-hand side. The one that's at the very top is the quick selection tool. It's identical. Some people start this using the quick selection tool and then come into the select and mask workspace. I don't think that's a smart way of working because you don't get the preview of what's really selected. So I do all of the work in this. So that's the top tool. The one underneath it is actually the refine edge tool. We'll look at what that one does in a minute. The one underneath that is a regular brush. This would be just like you take a brush on a layer mask and you just start painting. The one underneath that is the object selection tool. Again, we're not going to work with that guy right now. I don't really work with this tool a lot. I think they're better tools that do the exact same thing. The next one under is just the regular lasso tool. The hand tool is the same and the magnifying glass is the same. All the keyboard shortcuts to get to those magnifying glasses and all that are the exact same ones as in Photoshop. But anyway, I'm going to start with the one at the very top, the quick selection tool. And again, you do not want to touch the edge that you want this thing to find. So I'm going to use my bracket keys, the close bracket key just to the right +1 of the P key to make my brush a little bit larger, but not so large that I run into things. I want to avoid this area up in here where I've got background and hair showing together. This is not the tool for that area. Because again, if you click on it, it's going to look for the edge somewhere out in the background. But I'm going to start down in the girl, and I'm simply going to click and start to run this through. Again, I'm staying far away, and you can see that this is what the onion skin does. You can tell now this girl is fully selected because there's no ghosting on top of her anymore. But there is ghosting still on the background, and then there's ghosting in her hair. You can see that the hair that's in the very top, this middle area up in here, this is still ghosted. So the reason they use the onion skin is that if you were just to do this as a selection, so I'll show you what this is. You don't need to do this, but I'm going to click on my drop-down menu, my view here, and I'm going to come down to on layers, and you can see it shows me what's selected, but it makes me, I feel like, well, okay, the whole background is selected. Well, that's just because this is showing me how the composite's ultimately going to work. But I know that there's something missing on the top of her head, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to actually go after that because I can't see it. But if you stay on the onion skin, you know that there's hair that's missing up on the top. Does that make sense to everyone what's going on? Okay, So in order to then finesse this to its ultimate conclusion, we need to fix the selection that's happening on the hair. Number one, I've got background that's selected here that I need to get rid of. And number two, I've got hair that's missing from a selection here that I need to add. That is the next tool down, the Refine Edge selection. So if you click on this Refine Edge selection, now the circumstances change. Now you only want to paint on areas that do not have an edge. You do not want to use this tool actually on the figure because it will do damage to your figure. So you don't want to start painting this tool down in here because it will start to remove this selection, and that's not what I wanted to do. I simply want to fix this area that's up here where I've got background and hair together. If you take this tool and you start to just paint over this area that is the background together and let go, it gets rid of it. Again, don't touch the hair down here. Don't touch this figure down here with this tool. It will be destructive on that, and there's no need to. It's selected it perfectly. But now this hair that's up in here that wasn't selected, you still use this Refine Edge tool over all of that, and you will see it now picked up that hair that was missing from the selection. You've also got missing hair in the back plus background in the back on the hair that's sweeping up back behind her. So I'm going to paint over this entire area with that Refine Edge tool. Again, I don't want to come down into the body of the girl's hair. That's already been selected, and I do not want to damage that. So I'm going to then click on that, and now I've got actually a very good selection of what's going on in here. If you want to preview this before we say okay to this, click on your view menu and come down. If you click on black and white, this will show you the mask that it's going to create, and it's actually a pretty remarkable mask. If you want to see this, what it's really going to look like in your composite, come down to on layers. This is what your image is actually going to look like. Is this working for everyone? Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the onion skin because there's no reason to jump out of there. I can see what I need to see here. In the tools that are coming down here underneath this, you have two options right now at the top, color aware and object aware. If you select right now on object aware was what was selected, I'm going to select on color aware and see if there's any major shift in this. I'm going to go back. There's no shift. So there's no one of these systems is not doing anything better than another. One of them is trying to base this on color and tone. The other is trying to base it on the edges of the object. I'm not getting any significant change in this, so I'm going to pass beyond that. The edge detection tools here, we do not fuck with this stuff at all. There are better ways of doing what these tools do that I'm going to show you later. It isn't going to be today, but we will probably get to it next week or the week after. I do not mess with any of these tools here. However, if you go all the way down to the bottom, you've actually got your decontaminate colors. We'll talk about that in a second. And then you've also got this, how are you going to open this thing up? Output to. If you click on that, you've got a drop-down menu, and you can output either to a selection, which is a possibility. You've also got layer mask, which is also a possibility. You've got a new layer with a layer. I take that back. Yeah, I'm just going to go through all of these options right here. Selection, layer mask, new layer with layer mask, new document, or new document with layer mask. So you can only use a few of these. You could do selection, but there's no real reason to do that. We want to build the mask in here anyway. Might as well let Photoshop do all the work. Layer mask, you do not want to use this because what it does is it builds the layer mask for this layer, but it then applies the layer mask, which removes the entire background of the girl figure, which is a destructive move. We do not do any destructive moves in this class. We are able to recover from everything in this class. So you would not use layer mask. You would also not do new layer. It does the same thing. It creates a new layer, but it builds a layer mask for it. It then removes that layer mask, applies it, and you end up destroying the background no longer exists in your image. However, if you come down to new layer with layer mask, it saves the original one and it builds another layer with the layer mask. That is one option you can use. If you do new document is destructive as well. It'll create a brand new version of this file, but it will then create a layer mask, apply the layer mask, get rid of the pixels that were the background of that girl, destructive move. You can do a new document with a layer mask. It will keep that all intact. But in our case, I'm just going to do new layer with layer mask and then say, okay. And you'll see it built a separate layer. It keeps the original down here as a virgin in case something goes wrong. I've still got the virgin down here, but it's actually built this and it's actually added a layer mask to it as well. Did that work for everyone? And it does a fairly good job of this. There is another option that we can do on this, but I'm not going to show you until we get through something else later. So hold that thought. Are there any questions about this? Okay, you can close this guy up. You do not need to save it. I want to really quickly open up another image that's in our session number 3. It is the Gradients version 2. If you click this, it looks similar to the other one, although it's added 2 color bars. It's added a green and a blue color bar on this. And the reason I bring this open is that we need to very quickly talk about what's going on in here. So how many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars have you guys given Adobe over the years? It's like really frustrating to me. It's like, you know, I mean, they've raped us all, financially speaking. So, and when I show you what I'm going to show you right now, it's basically how Photoshop does everything. It's how Photoshop works. And it's an incredibly simple idea. There were 2 brothers, John and Tom Knoll, who were working on scanning software. And what they figured out was, if we can create a layer mask to control red and another layer, or not a layer mask, a mask to control the amount of red, and another mask to control the amount of green, and another mask to control the amount of blue, we can create any color image in the world that we want to create. And that's all Photoshop does. It creates 3 masks. That's all it does. So all the work that you do, all the advances that we've done, all that kind of shit, whatever, all the money that you have paid them is for that one idea. And in its simplest, you can see it right here. So if you take a look at your channels palette, take a look first up at the very top. So this is a gradient. Gradients, if you hover over the gradient, you'll see you get your readout here. I've got a 15, 15, 50. I've got a red value in here. Because again, grays are all equal amounts of red, green, and blue. So if I hover up in the middle, I've got 128s, 127s. If I go all the way up to the very top, I'm really close to the 255s. That's all it's doing. It's got equal amounts of red, green, and blue in those gradients. However, if you hover over the gradient, over the red line here at all and take a look at it, you only have a red value. You've got a 255 red and no green and no blue. That's it. What's controlling that, though, is the mask that's sitting in the channel. So if you come down to the red channel and you click on it, now again, I'm not clicking on the thumbnail, I'm not clicking on the word red, I'm clicking on the red area of that. It's not really a layer, but whatever you would call that area that is the red channel. And you take a look, what you can see is, in the areas that are green and blue, there is no red in those areas. So I've got a mask here, a black mask that is hiding all the red light from hitting that thing. I have, though, in the area that is red, I've actually got a complete white part of my mask that's letting all of that red light hit that area. Again, if you hover your cursor over this area, you still get that readout. It's a 255 red, 255. I mean, it's a pure white. If I hover over the areas underneath it, it is a pure black. So all this thing is doing is controlling. This one mask is controlling the red of my image. It's letting all the red hit that stripe that's at the top that is red, but it's hiding all the red from the green and the blue stripe that are underneath it, and then it gives you a gradated amount of red going from 0 in the black area all the way up to 255 in the white area. Does that make sense to everyone what's going on? If you click on the green channel underneath it, you will see that changes. And now what's happening is that it's allowing all of the green to hit here, but it's keeping all of the green away from the blue stripe and all the green away from the red stripe, because those are all pure colors. It's just a mask that is controlling that red and where that red can be, or in this case, where the green and where that green can be. And then finally, if you go down to the blue, and you can do the same thing, it just shows you where that's ultimately going to be. Does this make sense, everyone? Okay, I want you to go up to the top of your channels palette and just click on the RGB channel so you can see all the colors again. We're gonna add a layer on top of this, just a blank empty layer. So to add a layer on top of it, it's the icons that are at the very bottom of your layers palette. There's a garbage can on the far right. Next to it is a square that's got a little plus in it that adds just a blank layer above. That's all I've done. We good on this part? Okay. I want to click on the foreground color picker. So I'm clicking on the foreground color picker to open it up. And I want to build a cyan in here. What is cyan a combination of? Again, this goes back to your color theory, right? And why this shit's important. So there is no red in cyan. So I'm going to select the red value in the color picker that opened up. I'm going to type in a 0 for red. I'm going to hit the tab key for the green. I'm going to put in 255 because I want a pure cyan. It is a mixture of pure green and pure blue. So I'm going to click down and add 255 to my blue. And you can see that creates a perfect cyan color. I'm going to say OK to that. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. It's just a regular paintbrush. I'm going to use the bracket keys to make my brush a little bit larger. Immediately look up to your options panel to check. Number one, I'm going to click on the drop-down menu and say, what kind of brush do I have? Do I have a hard brush or a soft brush? I'm going to click and make sure that this is a 100% hard brush. That means its edges are going to be very strong. Then I'm going to get out of this flyout menu, you don't want to click on your image, because if you click on your image right now to get rid of this flyout menu, it will actually put a mark on your image. You don't want to do that. Click on the word Adobe. That flyout menu will go away and you will not have done anything to your image. Make sure that the blending mode of this brush is normal, 100% opacity and 100% flow. That's all you need. And then simply paint a line across your image. So I just painted a cyan line across my image. But take a look at what really happened. If you take a look at the 3 masks that are sitting in your channels, I'm going to click on the red one. There is no red in this mark that I just made. So that part of the mask is black. But if you take a look at the green, it's got a completely white there because it's allowing all the green light to hit. And the blue is the same thing. It's allowing all the blue light to hit. Does that make sense, what's going on? So what I just did, I created a new layer, I painted on it. All it did, the only thing it did was modify those 3 masks. To see what I mean, turn off the eyeball for that layer and you will see that those 3 masks just returned right back to the way they were before. So no matter what you do in Photoshop, here, check this out. Turn that light guy back on again. Select the layer, so I've got this on here. I want you to blur this top layer. Come up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and smack it hard. Put in like, I don't know, a 20. No, that's not that hard. Put in, I'm not getting a preview on this. That's weird. Well, we'll see what happens when I say okay. Huh. Oh. I bet you I have transparency locked on this. Nope. Fucking new version of Photoshop. They've changed. Are you guys getting a blur on yours at all? But I'm on a layer that's not locked. Well, anyway, I'll figure out. It looks like I've got a locked layer here, and I can lock everything, and then I can unlock it all. I don't think I have anything locked on here, but again, this would be possibly a preference fuck up and a restart, but nonetheless, no, I don't. I mean, I can, but it did. It should not be that way. Well, I don't want to blur the background layer. I only want to blur this stripe that I've added. That is not the way that should happen. But at any rate, you can see now, if you change the blur, it's just blurring the masks that are on these layers. So I'm going to crank this all the way up so you can really see and say okay to this. And this is just the effect that it's actually giving. You can see that modeled effect right here. That's all it's doing. All you do in Photoshop, no matter what you do, filters, brushes, all of that changes 3 masks. The red one, the green one, and the blue one. That's all it does, and gives you the effect that you're looking at. Make sense? All right. You can close this up. We don't need to save that. But now, what some of you came to this class for, we're going to start right now. So, in that same session number 3, you should find a thing that's called Hair Fantasia Copyright Lease Gange.psd. If you could launch that guy for me right now. It's a picture of a girl with a lot of hair that's on kind of a light-ish colored background. So, I want to separate this girl so that I can change the color of background that she's on, right? So the way I'm going to attack this, like I do in everything in here, I want to be non-destructive, so I'm going to create a layer mask for this. The advantage of layer masks is that they're non-destructive. You can modify them, you can throw them away. As long as you don't apply them and in a destructive way, and we'll look at what that means here, then you don't need to worry about it. Your image everything is still intact. I'm not losing anything, but I'm getting the effect that I want. I'm getting the result that I want. Does that sort of make sense? So I want to actually separate this girl. How would you separate this girl from the background? What would you use to do this? So a lot of you now, it's the last thing that we're going to look for, we'll use select subject. Are you guys familiar in working with select subject? It's one of the newer things that's come about in the last couple of years in Photoshop. It relies very heavily on artificial intelligence to do it, but there's 2 flavors of it. So we're going to look at this first and see if this is indeed the best selection method or not. We're going to do it the automated way, and then we're going to look at the old school way and see which of these you think is better, and that'll be the end of our day. All right, so to start with it, to get to the select and mask, not select and mask, but the select subject version of all of this, again, you can come up to the select menu and come down to subject right here. But the problem with this is that depending on how you've got this set up in Photoshop, in your preferences, it determines which method you want to be first to attack this. So there's 2 possibilities. The first possibility is what they call local, and it just means that you are going to use the software itself, Photoshop itself. You do not need to be connected online. Just Photoshop itself is going to look at this image, it's going to analyze it, and it's going to try and separate the subject for you. The other option is that it's online. And so in the online version of it, when you actually do select subject, it sends the copy of this up to Adobe's servers. Adobe's servers then run their software on it, which is a bigger, more advanced set than they can build into the program itself. It does the selection and then returns the selection back down to you. Now you would think that that would mean that the online version is always the best. It is not. It's usually better than the local version, but you will find times that it completely fucks up, and you will be much better off doing a local version of it. There's no way to know unless you try them both. But I can't try both because if I'm doing the menu selection here, it doesn't allow me to select which version of that I want to do. So instead, you need to click on any of your selection tools. I'm going to select on the marquee tool. That's not going to give it to me. I'm going to click and down here onto the quick selection tool. I can get it here. What I'm looking for is this select subject up in my options bar up in here. And with some tools you get it. So for instance, with the marquee tool, it's not there, but in the quick selection tool, it actually is here. You'll notice right next to the word select subject is an arrow pointing down. If you click on this, you will see by default, Photoshop has this device, quicker results is selected. In my case, I've changed that in preferences to always be, my default is going to be the cloud, the more detailed version of this. You get to pick here though before we actually do this. So I'm going to do the cloud detailed version of it and then simply click on select subject. And it builds a selection of this, and I'm actually going to save this selection. So I'm going to come up to the select menu, down to save selection, and I'm going to call this AI online. And say okay to that. I'm going to hit Command D to deselect that, and then I'm going to after the other one. I'm going to click again on this device instead of the cloud, but the device. Select subject again. And I've got a whole lot of stuff that's happening on there, whatever. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call this Save Selection, and I'm going to call it AI Local. And I'm going to say OK to that. Command D to deselect. You've now got both of those selections that are sitting right at the very bottom of your channels palette. Instead of clicking on the thumbnail, simply click on the right next to the word where it says AI Online, between that and the 6. If you click on that, it'll show it to you, and you can see that the online version of that sucks. Look how bad this is. I could do that shit with a lasso tool. Horrible. Then look at the local one. Considerably better. So again, this dispels that whole myth that I'll send this shit up to Adobe and they'll, not only will they steal your image to actually do some training their models on, but nonetheless. But anyway, so you get where this is all going, right? Okay, so that's the way you would do the automated version of this. We are going to try a different version of this. We're going to try the old school method of this that happened before any of this, and we'll see which is the better tool to actually do this with. Make sense? All right, so to do that, we need to start with what my goal in all of this is a layer mask, right? Do I have any masks that already exist in this image? Let's forget the two that I just made. Do I have any others? Exactly. I just told you, you got 3 masks in every RGB image, and all you're ever doing in Photoshop is impacting those 3 masks. I have 3 of them. I got one for the red channel, I got one for the blue channel, I got one for the green channel. So if you come over and you click in the area, again, don't click on the thumbnail, click in the area between the word red and the little command 3 is the version, it's the keyboard shortcut for selecting the red channel. Click on the middle right here. You can see this is the mask for the red channel. And again, this white background has got a full component of red in it, as well as green and blue. That's why it's white here. But the hair has got none of that red in it, or very little of it in it, whatever, and that's why it's dark here. And then the skin tones are very light because there's a lot of red in skin tones. Does that make sense? What's going on here? So, we good on this part? So, what I am looking for is, what's my challenge in this? My challenge is not her skin. My challenge is not the bra strap. It's not the necklace. It's not the edges of her cheeks. It's not her shoulders. It's not that. It's the hair. So you need to pick what's the challenge first. And so I'm looking for this, what is giving me the best mask for the hair, because that's going to be the most challenging part. So I'm looking at contrast. What I want is to get as much contrast between the hair and the background as I can. Then I'm going to modify that, but at least I want to start with the thing that's as close to what I hope to get as I can. So it's contrast. That's what I want. Contrast between her hair and the background. So I'm simply looking at her hair, and I'm going to then click on the area that's right between the word green and the command keyboard shortcut for that. I'm going to click on that, and what you see, ignore the figure. I picked up more tone in the figure, but the hair actually got lighter when I did that. So now I don't have as much contrast as the red channel. I don't have as much separation between the hair and the background. Then I'm going to try the blue. I'm going to click on that. The blue even gets worse. The hair is even lighter still. So what I know in this, and just looking at this, I'm going to go back to the red. The red is the best mask start-off point that I can get to separate the hair from the background. Again, if you look at the blue channel, the skin tone in here, in terms of separation, is much better in the blue channel than it is in the red channel. But the skin tone is not the thing that's going to challenge me here. It's the hair. Right? Okay, so I'm going to copy this red channel. To do it, you grab the red channel and you drag it down to the little icon at the bottom of the channels palette that's got the square with the plus in it. So simply drag it down. It's going to make a copy of the red channel at the very bottom of your channels palette. I'm going to double click on that word that says red, and I'm going to rename it Knockout 1. And say OK to that. Now, I call things knockout, and I know that there's sort of can be a violent overtone on that, right? It's not like I'm going to knock her. I'm not going to hit this woman and punch her. I'm not going to knock her out. what knockout actually stands for, it's an old term that was used in the filmmaking industry for basically generating masks to separate something from the background. So it's just an old term. Anyway, so you'll hear me use it all the time. Please don't think I'm anyway. So this is the beginning of all of this. So, but now I want to finesse this mask. It's not a perfect mask. If it was a perfect mask, the figure would be completely black and the background would be completely white. That's the goal that I'm looking for in here. And I can do that. I just need to do some work on it. So I need everybody, make sure that you've got the knockout selected at the bottom. You will see it's only highlighted, number one. I can now paint on this thing. I can blur it. I can do all sorts of stuff on here. That's what I'm going to do right now. So to start with, I want you to zoom into hair that's actually on the right side. If you think of the scope of her hair as being a clock face, I'm going to zoom into right around 3 o'clock. That's where I want to actually take a look at. And what I'm looking for is to try to find an area in here where I feel like that the I have a bit of both. I've got some of the hair and I've got some of the background. And so in this area, if you can find the same sort of area that I'm looking for in here, this kind of area, this sort of madness in here, it's about 3 o'clock. This is the area where I'm going to be working at. But I need everybody to then look and see what's going on here. You can see that some of the area like this, let me go to a cursor that you can actually, some of the area that's in here is a very light, not very light, it's a mid-tone of gray. If I use this as a layer mask right now, it's going to allow a lot of the background to show through that. If I want it to be completely opaque, I need to get that area black. But the problem is that hair is not opaque. Real hair is transparent. So you do not want to make your hair completely black in the layer mask. Your mask will be too aggressive. We need to have some of that background coming through in certain areas. In certain areas, not. If you take a look at the hair that's right in this area here where it's all like clumped together, the area that's right down in here, this should be completely black in your layer mask because it's solid. There's a whole bunch of it. There's no way any light from the background can come through it. But these areas like right out here, this little feathery edge that's out here, that should not ever be taken completely to black. If it is, it will look like your mask has been manually cut out. Does that make sense, everyone, what's going on? Okay, so I'm going to then look. There's two different things that I need to consider here as well. Number one, if you take a look at this area that's black right into here, everybody see the area I'm pointing at? It's much darker than the area that's right above it, that's in this lighter area right here. I'm going to run levels on this to increase my contrast. If I make this area that's right down here, you can see it's in the 20s. I'm reading the 20s right here. If I can get that to go to black, the area that's up in here that should also be black, which is in the 37s, will not be black. It will be 17. However, if I take the area up here that's 37 and make it black, the area that was already darker will already be black. Does that make sense? So what we're looking for here is we're trying to find a place on here that will give us information about how aggressive we want to be making the black part of our mask and also the white part of our mask. So if I've lost you now, stay with me. We're going to do it right now and we'll see how this goes. So to do this, you need to come over to the eyedropper tool that's in the tool palette. It's sort of in the middle area. So again, eyedropper tool. If you click on this, you'll get a flyout menu. We're not going to do the eyedropper tool. What we want to do is the color sampler tool. What this will allow us to do is put down points on our image that will then give us, they'll stick and they will give us a readout. So again, not the eyedropper tool, but the color sampler tool. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to zoom into this area right in here. Again, this area that is transparent in here, I want to stay away from that. But this area that's right in here, I know there's so much hair that is behind all of that. I know that that should be completely black. So I'm going to click once and it puts down a color sampler point. If you take a look up at the top, you'll see it's a 3x3 average. That was set up in the beginning when we set up the Magic Wand tool correctly. So this is also giving me a point on my info palette that's got this K with an 84%. Your number should be close. It's not ever going to be exactly the same, but you should probably be somewhere in the low 80s range if you try to hit the same point that I did. This K stands for the K of CMYK. These masks that are over here in my channels palette are only black and white. So what they do is they only give it to us in a K value. So because this is close to black, in K, a pure black would be 100% K. A pure white would be 0% K because it's a black ink. How much black ink is this? The problem is we don't work in CMYK in this. We work in RGB. So what I really want is to see this value in RGB, not in K. These percentages of K don't really, again, I've been doing this for a very long time. I could work with this, but I would never ask you guys to work with this. So to change that, come over to the little eyedropper, the number one eyedropper on your info palette. If you click on the eyedropper, you get a drop-down menu, and you can say, I want you to show me this value in a different set of numbers. I want to see this in RGB. So just click on that number, click on the eyedropper, little drop-down, come down to RGB, and you can see I've got a 41, 41, 41. You should be close. Did that work for everyone? I don't see a lot of people doing this. Is everybody, or we're just on auto here, we're going to watch the video later on? Is that the mode we're in? Okay, all right, just a bad way to work. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to zip back out now a little bit, so I'm going to zoom out. Again, spacebar command with the option key will give me the negative tool without losing the negative magnifying tool. I'm sorry? Oh, that's all right. I'm going to come to an area that's in my background now. The thing about this is that you want to make sure that in the background area, you don't hit something that actually has hair in it. But you want to stay close to the first point that you put down. If we go to someplace completely somewhere else in the image, you never know what's going to happen. So I'm going to get to something that's relatively close. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to put down my second point there. You can do up to like 8, 12, 10, I don't know, it's a lot. You can do a lot of points. You can do more points than you can keep track of. So, but you will see in my info palette now, I've also got another thing that's come up, another point number 2, also giving me a K value that is now 3%. And again, that's indicating that this is very close to white. If there was 0%, it would be a pure white because there would be 0 black ink on it. But again, I don't want to read this in values of CMYK. I want to click on that drop down on the eyedropper for my point number 2 and change this to RGB color as well. So now I've got both of these are reading RGB color, and I can then go in and adjust these to give me the mask that I want. So what I want to do is I want the point number 1, the 41, 41, 41 to be black. I want it to be 0, 0, 0. And I want my white point, the 22, in my case it's a 247, again, you should be close. I want the 247, 247, 247 to be 255, 255, 255. Then I'll have a much better mask. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so to do that, again, working on your knockout layer, we are going to do levels on this. You could do curves as well, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do levels. It's easier to see in the beginning. However, what you need to remember, though, is that this is not an adjustment layer. This has got nothing to do with layers. I cannot come over here and put an adjustment layer on this thing and do this work. I need to be working only on this knockout mask. This is a destructive move because I'm not going to use, there are no adjustment channels in here. I can't do that work there, but I can use all the tools that we've used before that work destructively on your image. But they're only going to be working destructive on this one channel that I'm trying to build into the correct mask. So to do this, you can either come up to the image menu, down to adjustments, down to levels, or you can look at the keyboard shortcut right across from that is Command L and do the same thing. So hit Command L, it'll bring up the levels dialog box. This is the other reason I work in RGB on the info palette is because I've got those same numbers that exist right here. Now in a perfect world, you would say to yourself, well, this seems so simple now. All I need to do, because I've got 41s that are right here. By the way, when you put an adjustment layer on any of these info readouts, you'll have 2 readouts separated by a slash. What those are is the readout on the left is the readout that you started with. It will never change. The readout on the right is what it reflects whatever change you make. Now these are the exact same numbers because I haven't done anything yet. But as soon as I do something, the numbers on the left will not change, the numbers on the right will. So you would think, well, it's just so easy, Versa, why don't you just type in 41 here for in the actual dialog box and you should be good to go. Don't ask me why, that does not work. So instead what you need to do is this. You need to grab the black point little icon that's underneath the histogram on the left-hand side, and the whole time, I'm going to click and start to drag it towards the middle, but the whole time I'm watching these readouts right here. You want to get close to 0, but not quite there, then you want to stop. So I'm going to start to drag this over. I'm looking at my readout. I'm down to 23 right now. I'm working over. I'm down to 5 right now. I'm going to stop right there. Once you get close, you need to go to your arrow keys, because what we're trying to do here is the absolute minimum correction to give us the mask we want. You don't want to come in here, look at this, well, look at my screen, don't do this. I can whack this mother all the way over there. It's making that thing black, but it just fucked up my whole mask. It just makes it, here, I can even make it worse. I can go here. That is not going to create a pretty mask for you, I can promise you that. So again, it's the absolute minimum. So I'm going to go back where we were till I get to, so now I'm at a 2 in my after. Go to your arrow keys, and it's either the up or down arrow key. I don't ever even try to remember which one it is. I'm going to hit the up arrow key, and if that number starts to get lower, I'm good. If I'm going to hit the low, if it starts going in the wrong direction, just hit the other key. So it's either the up or down arrow key. So I'm going to hit the up arrow key, and that took me to a 1. I'm going to hit it one more time. It didn't change. I'm going to hit it one more time. It still hasn't changed. I'm hitting it another time. It still hasn't changed. Another time. It still hasn't changed. Another time. Another time. What is going on here? Finally, I get to it at 51. I had to go all the way to 51. Even though my info palette was telling me, well, you're at 41, I had to go all the way to 51 to get that thing to go to 0. That's why you cannot trust these numbers. You can trust the readouts, the information it's giving you, but you can't just blindly pick those numbers and plug them in and think you're good to go. Then I'm going to come back to my white point here, and again, it's changed my white point a little bit. They're now reading 245s. I'm going to grab the white point and start dragging towards the middle until I get close to 255, but then stop, go to your arrow keys. In this case now, it'll be the down arrow key until you just get to 255. Then you need to look back at your black point to make sure it did not change. If you're doing really strong corrections in here, it's going to be a back and forth between back to black and white. You're going to go back and forth between them several times, because when you change one, it's going to change the other. But right now, I've got the mask that I think that I want. But before you say okay to this, you need to zoom out. So I want to see my whole mask. So again, with levels still open, hovering over my image, hold down the spacebar command and option. I still get the negative magnifying glass to make my image a little bit smaller. If I let go of all of those and hold down just the spacebar, I will get the hand and I can start to look around. But the most important thing I can do is use my preview check mark right here to uncheck and recheck. I'm going to zoom in to the edge of my hair again, into this area in here, uncheck and recheck. Is this giving me what I want? I feel like I'm getting a little stain on this background here. It's not perfect for me, but I'm probably going to go ahead with this anyway. It looks pretty clean to me. The areas that are in here that I said should still be some shade of gray, that is the really feathery fine hair part, that should be letting some of that background through. It's not a pure black. Look at these things right in here. These are not pure black in here. These are middle shades of gray, which will indicate transparency in my mask. Does that make sense to everyone? What's going on here? So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. Then I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out to actually see what's really going on in here. And I'm feeling pretty good about the hair. I'm feeling pretty good about the mask. There's a couple of weird things in the hair. If you'll notice right here in the sort of like center part, there's some, it looks like anomalies. I'm not sure if that is background or highlights on her hair. It can be highlights. You need to watch for those. The only way you can tell is to go back up to your original RGB channel and actually click on that area between the RGB and the right side. So I'm going to click right in the middle here. It will bring that back on, and you can see that this area in here is actually background that's trying to show through. You can also see here, if you go back to your layer mask, that I was too aggressive with that black part. It's killed some of that background that's in this area right here. So what I'm going to do is go up to my history palette right here. I'm going to go back one step in history, so where it said new color sampler. I'm going to then run levels again. Well, first I'm going to change this K so it gives me an RGB readout. Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. I'm going to do my black point. Remember, I got up to that 40 area and I felt like I just kept having to hammer it harder and harder and harder. I'm at my 1 right now with a 46. That's actually leaving a little bit more of that background in there. I feel better about that. So I'm going to go with this instead of the 51 that I had before, which would have been too aggressive. And then I'm going to pull my white slider back until I get it to close to 255. But then I'm going to go after the arrow keys, type it in, and I'm going to say okay to that now. And I feel like I'm off to a better start here. Is this making sense to everyone what's going on? Are we good on this? Okay, at this stage of the game, I would go to my tablet, but we don't have time for that, and you don't really need to do that. You can still do this with your mouse, but going forward, think about doing this with your graphics tablet because it's the perfect time to use it. But I'm feeling good about the hair, but what I'm not feeling good about is the skin. So you can take a look. I'm going to zoom into her skin right here, but what is it that I'm really looking for her skin? Well, I want her whole body to be black. The only thing I want to be white is the background. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that you are working on the knockout channel again, so it's the only one that's highlighted at the bottom. I'm going to grab the B to get a brush, and you need to make sure that this is a completely hard brush because you do not want to paint outside of the lines. If you use a soft brush, you run the risk of that soft edge spilling out into your background. You want perfect control of this brush. Hard, completely hard. I want a hard edge. I don't want to, look what happens here. You can see it. Watch my screen. Don't do this. Watch my screen. I'm going to do this as a really hard edge right against the side of her cheek right here. So I'm going to brush a little bit smaller. I'm going to do this hard edge right here. And just do a click. It's a good way to actually track edges is you simply just do a series of clicks like this. But look what happens if I do this with a soft brush. I'm going to do a completely soft brush. I'm going to try and do the same thing. So I'm going to put my brush right on the edge of that. And when I click on that, it spilled all of that black ink out onto my background. And you will never fix that. So undo. Hard brush completely. So we're going to learn a better way next week to actually get this edge. But for the time being, I just want you to come in close to that side of her cheek. Get your tangent of your brush, the very edge on the cheek, on the line of her cheek. Click once, come down a little bit more, click a second time. But it gets to be really hard to see what's going on in here. I can't really see a preview of what I'm trying to trace here. So to change that, I'm going to hit Command Option Z to go back in time. To change that, scroll up to the very top of your screen of the channels palette. You do not want to select the RGB channel. You want to click on the eyeball alone. And what it will do is that now you will see you are still only working on your knockout channel, but everything in your knockout channel that was black is now red. That is the preview of this. But you're able to see the skin tone underneath it. So now it's simpler to trace that line, and you'll see you're putting down red now, but in reality that red is actually black. So I'm just going to trace down here until I get this down to her chin where it goes into her body. I'm also going to do the same thing going up here at the very top because I want to keep all that background that's showing on her hair back there. And so this gives me a good edge for this guy. Then you go up to the very top again, turn off the eyeball for this, and you can see that this knockout that you're working on, you were actually painting with black ink. Does that make sense to everyone? So now you can kind of go crazy in the middle. All of this needs to be black. Again, stay away from your edges, but all of this part needs to be black. I can get into here next to her ear. Stay away from these edges because if you get out on those edges, you will screw them up. But I can paint all of this. I'm going to zip back out a little bit more, and I can paint down here on a good part of her body. You don't only need to paint. You could actually, I'm going to zip out just a little bit more. You could actually go for the lasso tool, the L key, and you could actually select a big old area of her. Again, stay away from your edges. And with that selection made, I'm going to fill it with black. The keyboard shortcut for filling with foreground color is Option Delete or Option Backspace. Command D to deselect. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. But now I've got the edge of her body, and that's still not good for me. I need to fix that part. This is where the money that you paid to be in this class is going to come home. So with this brush selected, so I'm going to go back to the B key to actually get that brush selected. You need to change the blending mode of this normal brush from normal down to overlay. And what a blending mode of an overlay brush does is it understands the tonality that you are painting on, and it tries to respect that. So with this brush selected and it's set to overlay for my blending mode of my brush, this is not the layer, not the channel, but the brush. If you hit the X key to make white your foreground color and try to paint on her head up here where it's black, nothing happens because I'm using an overlay brush. What overlay does is it looks for anything darker than 50% gray and tries to keep it dark. It looks for anything lighter than 50% gray and tries to keep it light. So if I come out here onto the edge of the background and I hit the X key to make black my foreground color and try to paint out here, nothing happens because it's trying to respect the white that's actually underneath there. Does that make sense to everyone? So I'm going to stick with my black brush and then check this out. I'm going to zoom in to her shoulder right here. Do not make Photoshop work any harder than it has. You could start this with half of your brush on the background. I'm going to say don't do that. Just get close to it, but simply click and start to paint down, and you can see it found the edge of her skin and respected it. But I didn't get it to go black. But this can be a cumulative brush. I've just made the skin darker. I haven't changed the background at all. Hit it a second time with your brush. You can hit it a third time with your brush, and now I've got that edge. Is this working for everyone? This is a game changer right here, guys. I'm going to do the same thing really quickly on her neck, and you'll notice on her neck I'm actually getting background that's actually showing up. Hit the X key to make white your foreground color and come in and clean that stuff up off the background. Does that make sense what I'm doing here? So again, I am just going to go back and forth with these to try to get this outlined better, to make this part dark. If you then get to the point where the jewelry can't go any darker and her top strap, the bra strap doesn't work for you anymore, simply change your blending mode back to normal, and then you can go in with that tangent trick and simply tap them to go ahead and include this part back into here. Now you'll see at the very end right here, and I've got 2 minutes to finish this up, and then, well, actually I should always set my watch wrong. I've got 4 minutes to finish this, so I'm going to just show you this trick right now, and then we're going to just see how well this mask actually worked. So take a look at my screen. See this area that's right up into here where the hair is actually going into? I've got background, and you can see there's tone in it, but I've also got these really fine little hairs in here. I don't want to kill all those little hairs. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this an extremely soft brush. I'm going to make it all the way completely zero hardness here to make a totally soft brush. So now I've got a really feathered edge. And then I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And then I'm going to make white my foreground color because I'm going to paint this on my background. And I'm simply going to place my brush so that the edge of my brush is touching that feathery hair. Not the center of my brush, but the edge. I'm going to click and drag away. And you can see it does way too much on this guy. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. I'm going to make my brush considerably smaller. And then I'm going to change my opacity. I'm going to drop my opacity down to like 30% or something like that. I'm going to try the same trick again. I'm going to click and drag away. And you can see that's not really doing it for me here as well. Command Z to undo that. What have we got going on in here? I don't think smoothing. What is your smoothing? Is your smoothing 10%? Yep, that's the default on here, and that may be my issue right here. So click and drag out. Yep, that's the issue right here. I'm going to simply click and drag down, click and drag. Oh, I take that back. One thing I'm going to change. So I'm going to go back in history to bring all of that back to an overlay brush, not a normal. Back to overlay, and now I can use a bigger brush. That's what I did wrong. So now I'm going to again hover over, so the edge of my brush is touching those feathery hairs, click and drag away, 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 click and drag away. You've cleaned out most of the background. You've left enough of the hair to make this selection believable. And if we lost some feathery hairs in there, who the fuck is going to know? No one, right? So then I'm going to zip back out. I don't have this completed yet, but you'll see what where I'm going to finish this up really quickly just so you can see how I would use this. X key again, all the way up, normal blending mode, 100% opacity. I'm going to just type in undo, make it a completely hard brush. And just take care of that area right here. So ignore this other side of her body over here. Well, here, I'll just finish this really quickly. Overlay brush. And kick it down here repeatedly like that. Hit the X key to clean up the background that we just added, and a little bit in there, whatever. So anyway, this is going to be my layer mask. Again, I would continue to refine this. It's missing that little bra strap, but you guys get where this is all going, right? So I'm going to now load this as a selection. How do I load this as a selection? The way you load everything. Hover over the thumbnail, hold down the command key, and click. You've now loaded this as a selection. Come over to your background copy, and down at the bottom of the layers palette is a square, a rectangle, a light rectangle with a dark circle in the middle. That's the add layer mask version. I'm going to click on this and it adds the layer mask. But oh, lo and behold, I did the exact opposite of what I was trying to do. I kept the background and I hid the figure. I always work this way. It doesn't matter. Select the layer mask, make sure it is selected, and if you look up at the properties panel, there is an invert. If you click on that, it inverts your layer mask. This is now a girl on, again, you can't tell because again, there's a white that's sitting underneath it. So I need to change the color. So I'm going to click now on my background layer. I'm going to add an adjustment layer to this. So I'm going to click down at the very bottom, the circle that's half black and half white. It's going to open up, and I'm going to go up to the very top and say, I want to add a solid color to this. Cyan was the color that I had selected already. It's my foreground color, so it's the one that populates this, and I'm fine with that. I'm just going to say, okay, give me a cyan. Go in there and take a look at this mask, folks. Right now, you should be jumping up and down for joy, because I got to be honest with you. You do this on a job interview for retouching, you go from the $9.50 an hour person to the $100 an hour person. Sure, I'm going to go all the way back. I'm going to get rid of the layer mask. This is, remember I said, so I'm throwing this layer mask away right now, and this dialog opens up. And you remember I said to yourself, never apply this thing. This is what happens if you apply it. So you can see right now, that background is totally gone. That is a destructive move. There's no recovering from this. Whatever I just threw away, I can't recover from. Well, if I save the file. I can actually go back in history now to where I deleted this layer right here. And again, instead of apply, just hit delete. It just gets rid of the layer mask, but doesn't get rid of the background. So, with your knockout layer finished, your knockout mask, right? Hold down the command key, hover over the thumbnail, not the written part, the thumbnail. Click on it, it loads it as a selection. Then if you come back over to your background copy, select it. And then at the bottom, the icon that has the square with the little circle in the middle is the apply layer mask. Click on it, it applies a layer mask, but it's inverted. It's hiding the figure and only showing the background. The figure in my mask is black. The background is white. It's showing that. I need the opposite. If you can't remember this invert shortcut right here, just hit Command I. That's also will invert it. And you can see my mask just inverted. So the figure is now white, so I can see it, but the background is black, so it's being hidden. And then finally, I'm going to click on the background layer because I want to put a different background underneath it. Right now, it's just showing transparency. So I've selected the background layer, the very bottom one. I'm going to then click on the Add Adjustment layer, the circle that's half black and half white. You'll get a flyout menu, and I'm going to come and say, I want to add a solid color adjustment layer underneath the figure, but on top of the background. Mine ended up being cyan because cyan is the foreground color that I'm working with, that I had already. I'm just going to say okay to that. But now look at this. You've got all of the areas of her hair where that background should be showing through are there. They're all transparent. All of that. This is where we're going here. Does this make sense, everyone? So then finally, the last thing to do is let's see what really looks better. I'm going to go back to my channels. I've just clicked, again, I didn't click on the thumbnail, I clicked on the channel itself. This was the online, remember we did the online version of it? That looks horrible. Then we did the AI local version of it, and that actually looks pretty good. And then we've got, I need to invert my mask back again, so Command-I. This is now the mask that I've made using that. This is the AI local one. Would it be better? I doubt it. Is there missing all the little places of her hair that were showing through the background are all gone in the AI version of this. But if I look at the version that I made, it's all there. All of these little bits and pieces are here. This is a far more natural, organic mask. Okay, last thing, homework. There is in your student files an assignment folder. There's this image called Sunny. The assignment will all explain it out to you. There are 4 areas that I need you to separate with Sunny. I need you to knock out just the blue background. I need you to knock out just her sweater. I need you to knock out just her skin. And I need you to knock out just her hair. So you will end up with 4 layers and a mask on each one of those layers that is showing each one of those individual areas, right? So you'll have a layer mask that is we'll do a new layer here. I'll just do Command J, and we'll call this blue background. This is all in the assignment, guys. I'm just going to the further. Then you would build a layer mask that only shows the blue background. Non-destructive. Still got the full image, but the mask is controlling so you only see the blue background. Then we're going to do another layer, Command J, and this one's going to be the sweater. And then Command J again, and this is going to only be her skin. And then finally Command J again, and this is only going to be her hair. That's it. That's your assignment for next week. Are we good? All right, really quickly, I will show you the homework that was turned in. If you haven't turned in your homework yet, you've got a little bit of time because I'm not going to grade this tonight. Drag it and drop it in the Dropbox. Again, it might even say to you, you can't see what you're doing. You might get that warning, but I only have one. That's the only homework I'm seeing. There's what? Oh, if you're saving it as like a TIFF file or something like that. Yeah, if you're saving it as a TIFF file, just do no compression. But anyway, I've only got one assignment, so the rest of you either need to do this now or you need to do it before tomorrow, because I may download all of this tomorrow and start. So I'm going to leave this up here so you can sort of see what's going on. Yeah, mucho better. I'm going to stop the recording, and then you guys, if you're done, you can split.